It's Saturday, and you know what that means. It's time for Through the Years, episode 60. Through the Years, the podcast that reviews Ring of Honor, show by show, from the beginning. My name is Trevor Dame. The other voice you will hear, as always, is Matt Feuerstein. And Matt, yes, I changed up the intro a little bit. I recorded it just now 4 times in a row just because I kept questioning myself. But the tone of it, even though I think I said it fine every time. But Matt, obviously with that intro being a little different this week, or this episode, we should acknowledge that Brody Lee, the John Huber, has passed away since the last episode. And although he was not a very long-term alumni of Ring of Honor, he did have a stay in there as part of Age of the Fall. And more importantly, he was just a wrestler that you can see with all the tributes seemed to be nearly universally beloved in a way few wrestlers are. And because of that, I feel like I almost don't have much to offer because we did not know Brody Lee, but I liked some of his work. But just that, that guy seemed like an amazingly well-liked guy. He was a talented guy who was just starting to get more of a spotlight put on him. It's an unbelievably tragic that he's behind a wife and 2 kids. And my condolences to his family and friends. Absolutely. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, what can be said that hasn't already been said? I mean, likewise, my condolences to all of his loved ones, all of his fans. It was, I felt just as horrible as everybody else. It's going to be many years before we get up to the ROH shows that he was actually on, if we ever do. He did actually have some standout ROH performances for a little while, in his brief run there. And, that's when I wasn't too, attuned to the entire indie scene. So that's when I first heard of him. I don't know, were you familiar with him before he went to ROH?
Yeah, this was the period where I was watching a fair bit of Chikara too.
Right, yeah.
Probably the year or 2 before that. So, getting to see him there too. I mean, I remember watching, anyone that's been following the coverage of Brody's passing has seen probably a million people have retweeted that little clip from a match in Chikara with Tim Dunst where he just starts the match by putting a big running boot to his head and seems like he killed him. And I remember watching that when I got the release of that show, and just, it's still stuck with me all these years later. Like, holy shit. Yeah. I remember the first time I watched that. I remember how I felt, and it's similar to how I feel now, going, holy shit.
Yeah, no, he definitely made a big impression, and it's a really horrible tragedy. But I also do want to add, this is our first show of 2022. Right, because it has to, with everything that's happened, it has to have been over a year since the last time we recorded, right? It has to have been.
Yeah. And of course, since the calendar has changed, everything is good now. That's the way it works. If you have a bad year, January 1st, it's instantly good.
Yeah, being that this is 2022, I can confirm everything is good now.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. I'll tell you something that's good, Matt. And that's the Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network. We have our own feed now, Through the Years. If you look up ThROH for the spelling for Through the Years on basically any podcast app, you will find us. And if you just want just us, that is the feed. And generally our show goes up there a little bit early because Matt uploads it basically right after almost every episode, right after he edits it the night of. But the Pro Wrestling Only Network continues to put up our show, and they have a bunch of great podcasts too. And one other podcast we have to plug, Matt, something that happened between the last episode and this episode, is we appeared on our friend Alan Cunahan, former guest of the show, Alan Forel's show on the Pro Wrestling Torch with our good friend and other guest of this show, Justin Shapiro.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We both debuted on the Torch. It was great timing, and perfect week to be on the Torch. Seriously though, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's always fun being on a show with Justin, and we've both done it a lot. And Alan, it's a special treat for me whenever I'm on a show with Alan. He was nice enough to let me on his shows back on the Observer site back in the day, indie good old days. But now he got me onto the Torch too. He's really my ticket, my meal ticket, that Alan Cunahan. So I thank him so much when he hears this in about 10 months.
We're riding the Alan train as far as it's going to take us.
That's right. Onto the torch. We wrote it right onto the torch, right into the ground. No, just kidding. The torch is ascendant.
But, I mean, Alan's show, you will have to pay for a Torch subscription if you want to listen to that episode, but Alan's show is great. And if you like, if you've heard the shows we've plugged in the last year where Matt, I, and Justin do feared and hated Joe Gagney's 5-star match game on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. If you like the parts that aren't trivia and are just us goofing off, this was basically us doing that for, 2.5 to 3 hours, I think. So, yeah, if you like that, yeah, it's if you enjoy what we have done in the past in that vein, I think it'll be worth a subscription. But there are a couple pieces of news that between the last Ring of Honor show and this one, but the first one actually, it's something I just left out of the last episode that was kind of edited for time and I just scanned over. It's just a quick little note, but it's interesting to keep in mind as we watch this period of shows. It was from The Observer from the review of the last show we did. Dave writes, Austin Aries has a bad knee, but is working through it since he's getting by far the most high-profile chance of his career. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. I forgot to mention in that last episode, I believe, but it's crazy. It's going to be interesting to kind of see his performances where apparently, he's like a lot of wrestlers, working hard during, this was a point where the spotlight was on him in a big way that it had never been before in his career. And the other quick little story was Dave also wrote in The Observer around this time, the reason the Briscoe brothers have disappeared is that Mark still hasn't recovered from his shoulder injury suffered in a motorcycle accident that aggravated a previous shoulder injury from high school football. Jay doesn't want to wrestle unless Mark does, feeling it hurts Mark. It's pretty clear that even a year back, these guys look to have a world of potential with their age, experience, and athletic ability, that they don't seem to be looking in the direction of wrestling as a career, and merely something they did for fun when they were younger, So that was a little funny to read that, doing the research for this, being like, well, I mean, they are still gone through the years terms quite a while, but in real life time, they won't be back that much. It won't be too much longer before.
Well, another year. Yeah. From this.
I mean,
yeah.
A year can feel, anyone that's lived through the last year can know a year feels like a long period of time. But in terms of their lives, it's funny that Dave's already kind of thinking that basically writing them off when they were barely into their 20s, when it actually, no, they're just going to take a year off and then come back.
And they in fact had extremely long wrestling careers. But also still got to do other things, right? They have their own business completely separate from wrestling. They just do both.
Yeah. And, they've stuck with Ring of Honor pretty much the entire time. So, I mean, I imagine that also, Ring of Honor is not the WWE type schedule where you can have a farm and work in Ring of Honor. But that brings us to today's show, which has nothing to do with chicken farms. But the Ring of Honor Trios Tournament 2005 took place March 5th, 2005 at the Pennsylvania National Guard Armory in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in front of a reported crowd of 600 fans. Matt, this show was I brought it up on the last show that this was the only six-man tag tournament Ring of Honor ever did, and you immediately corrected me and then immediately apologized for correcting me, which was something you should have done because you did absolutely the right thing. But so this isn't a correction, but I did in fact take a look just to be like, oh yeah, Matt's right, and my memory's like a sieve. So I looked at in doing research for this episode. They did, in fact, you were right. They did do a second trios tournament in 2006. Although, unlike this show, they did not brand it as They did not brand the whole show as a trios tournament. They called that show Tag Wars. It was headlined by a tag team title match. There was also some singles matches, and it was only a 4-team, 2-round trios tournament. And then, Matt, I don't know if you remember this, in 2007, there was going to be a third trios tournament and show. In fact, that did seem like it was going to be branded Trios Tournament 2007. And that was an ill-fated show late in 2007 where some guys didn't make the show due to travel problems. Jack Evans and some other wrestlers got into a car accident, and that show they ended up scrapping what was going to be a 6-team, 2-round trios tournament, and instead made that turned out to be unscripted 3. They completely shuffled the card. So This is the only show that ever ended up getting branded as a trios tournament, but there was technically 2, and on the books there was supposed to be 3 of these.
Ah, okay, you're right. Yes, I remember that Tag Wars, because I had thought that that show was called Trios Tournament '06, but you are correct, and so we get to correct each other, and now we're even.
And so for those who aren't watching this event, the background is it's a most of the show, there's going to be a couple other matches, but most of the show is a 8-team, 6-man tag team tournament, or a trios tournament, with the idea being it happens all in one night, all the matches, and the winning team, each member of it gets to book their own match in the future. Gabe Sapolsky talked to the Torch after the show, and he kind of gave them some background to the show. The Torch wrote, Ring of Honor held a one-night 6-man tag team tournament last Saturday night in Philadelphia. Ring of Honor promoter Gabe Sapolsky tells the Torch the concept for the show was the result of a brainstorm he had one night. Quote, actually, one night I was just thinking about all the great 6-man and tag matches we had in 2004, and it just popped into my head to try and to do the 6-man tournament as a concept show that was different than all our other shows. He said, I was very pleased with how it came out. The ring breaking, which we'll get to when that occurs on the show, the ring breaking hurt the semifinal matches, but they both still turned out to be good matches anyway. The competitive squashes in the first round were fun, and the finals and first round match with Samoa Joe's team versus Spanky's team were both great. I would consider making this an annual tournament if the DVD sales are strong. Then we'll go next, Matt, to the PW Insiders report from the show, where Mike Johnson wrote, while Ring of Honor often likes to take chances and try different things, the 6-man concept simply wasn't one that drew fans, as ticket sales were slow going into the event. The promotion most likely won't try to do the idea again in the future, although the show was paced well and held momentum from an entertainment point of view. So, I guess our thoughts on the overall show will become evident as we review the show. But Matt, the one thing I wanted to say off the bat and kind of pick your brain on this is, I don't think the idea of a trios tournament on paper is bad. And in fact, I can see why as a promoter, especially with Ring of Honor in 2005, this year we're covering, running more shows than they ever had, like wanting to find any kind of gimmick show where the matches where you don't give away singles matches or tag matches, by tag I mean traditional tag matches, but it's still a draw. I think that's like the holy grail for any booker, like Royal Rumble or War Games or
Survivor Series, yeah,
exactly. Like
World War III, everyone's favorite.
Battle Bowl. No, yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the point. Is for every Royal Rumble, there's like 2 Battle Bowls, but I feel like, bookers are, for, obvious reasons, always trying to find those shows where it's like the gimmick draws, not the matches, and you don't really give away anything. And I think this was probably an attempt to do that, and the fact that they never really were able to build a show completely around this gimmick again. Like, as I mentioned, when they do the show again in a year, it's reduced to just, instead of an 8-team tournament, it's just 4 teams, and it's just part of a larger show rather than this, where this really was not just that you look at the matches, but how they basically put pretty much almost every great piece of talent they had access to into the tournament. This was Gabe really putting all his eggs in this basket for this show.
Yeah, when you said for every Royal Rumble there was 2 Battle Bowls, I wanted to be like there were 66 Battle Bowls. But I well, I guess I did do the joke anyway. But I didn't interrupt you with it like I was going to. So, no, but this, I mean, I get why they did. I mean, Chikara, they made a pretty successful run of doing trios tournaments, didn't they? So,
yeah, and actually, it's worth knowing this actually predated, I mean, the trios tournament by 2 or 3 years when they started doing the King of Trios, although King of Trios evolved out of a traditional tag team tournament called World Tag Grand Prix, I think. But I guess the one difference is King of Trios for Chikara was their biggest shows of the year a lot of years, but those were shows where they also basically like booked more outside names than any other show. Like they treated it like their WrestleMania, where, Gabe's approach here when you look at the booking is just basically use everyone we have. There's no special fly-ins or anything. It's a really good roster, but it's all regulars.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it just didn't work as well. But the point is that it's not a bad concept on its own, but you could certainly see why it wouldn't be a big draw. I mean, there's a reason that Vince McMahon went away from the traditional Survivor Series concept when he did, because that wasn't a draw anymore. King of the Ring, wasn't like all these these gimmicks are not the draws that like just having big grudge matches and big title matches are. So, but can't blame them for trying.
No, it was a good try, and we'll talk about how we feel about the show, but we can actually get right to the opening segment, which was we opened with Steve Corino backstage, complained that he's on time for a promo, and CM Punk and Colt Cabana, his partners for tonight, are late. Corino says he has 10 years in the business. Punk and Cabana have 10 combined. At this point, Colt shows up. Corino asks him where's CM Punk. Colt says that Punk has, quote, gone loco in El Cabeza due to what happened in Chicago where Jimmy Rave attacked his girlfriend, Tracy Brooks, and blinded him. Corino asks what happened on that show because Ring of Honor didn't book him, so I guess Corino not keeping up with results. Colt informs him that the embassy blinded Punk. He went to the doctor, and Colt says blue blockers are doing nothing for Punk. Colt says Punk told him that he'd be here tonight. Corino continues to be annoyed with this whole thing, saying frickin' ego he's got. Corino does the kind of work shoot thing usually where he's like, okay, I'm ready to cut a promo, and then Gabe's like behind the camera going, okay, 3, 2, 1. Corino changes his tone. He starts cutting a promo saying that tonight's a big night for the Extreme Horsemen. He says there's a six-man tournament tonight, and the winning team gets to book their own matches. Corino says if he wins, there will be more matches for his students Ricky Landell and Alex Law. He says, second, I'll get a raise. Third, I'll have one more match with Homicide. Corino then says if Homicide's team wins and his team doesn't, he's begging Homicide to grant him that match. Fourth, Corino wants a world title match. And then Corino says if he wins, Gabe Sapolsky's worst nightmare will come true as the Extreme Horsemen of C.W. Anderson and Simon Diamond will come to Ring of Honor. And that's basically the whole promo. Matt, a couple weird things from this. First off, this is something that he's done more than this show, but I did find it interesting that when Corino left Ring of Honor in late 2003 after a War of the Wire, that barbed wire match with Homicide, Corino did a whole promo where he was like, I'm done with Homicide. He wouldn't even shake my hand. Like, I never want to wrestle him again. No more hardcore matches. And basically, like, one of the main thrusts he's had since he's come back is to keep, like, hinting that he wants, or in this case, outright saying he wants a match with Homicide, and there's no real explanation why he's changed his mind about that and done a complete 180. Not a notorious 187, but a 180. And I guess the other thing that I thought was funny was it seemed like from the way everyone else talked about the stip for this tournament, the idea was the winning team, each member of it gets to book one match of their choosing. Corino just lists off like 5 demands he's going to have if he wins this tournament, like some that are not even like booking matches. Like if he wins this, I'm going to get a raise. It's like, I don't know if that's in the stipulations for tonight.
That doesn't really fall under the category of booking. But no, yeah, that's what confused me too, though, because when you mentioned that everyone gets to book a match, I was like, are you sure that's all it is? Because and it's because of this promo. Because Corino was like, yeah, I want like 12 different things. And maybe Corino was going to just like take all of Punk and Cabana's requests. maybe Cabana was going to request more matches for Ricky Landell and Alex Law.
Maybe he was going to do like the classic genie thing where you wish for more wishes. He was like, okay, Gabe, the one match I want booked is me versus Alex Law, and if I win, I get 20 more requests. Like, the perfect crime.
You gave me a good idea, because if we're getting to the stage of wrestling where we're booking like setting people on fire and pulling out their eye, we might as well have like genies. And like maybe there can be a match where if you win, you get 3 wishes.
Finally, a way to freshen up Money in the Bank. It's just a golden lamp hanging from a rope.
But who would play the genie? Maybe Dijakovic. He seems versatile.
For some reason, he seems versatile.
No, they made him T-bars. That's why I thought that was funny.
You can do T-bar, you can do Dijak, you can do anything then. But we go somewhere else backstage to Dunn and Marcos with their partner tonight, El Generico. And I'll note, depending on what you want to believe, you could say this is his first appearance, his second, or his third in Ring of Honor, because let's go through this. His first appearance ever in Ring of Honor was not as El Generico. It was as the Weapon of Mass Destruction.
The bad one, which I thought was funny.
number 2 at Final Battle 2004. Then he worked a Do or Die show in February, and that was a pre-show, so obviously didn't make the main card. So technically, if you want to play, you can say this is his debut in the sense that this is the first main card, like main DVD release he appeared at with his gimmick.
It's the debut of El Generico. It is not the debut of Rami. What's his name? I don't.
Sable or Sable, something like that. Or Sami Zayn, whatever you want. Man has many names. So El Generico, I should also know, is very happy, and he's wearing a Tito Santana T-shirt, which I thought was, I don't know, just amused me for some reason. Marco,
let's say Rami Sebe or Sebe is there's not a pronunciation thing on Wikipedia, but that is his name. I don't want to be disrespectful by not correcting the record, but yes.
And I'm a bad Canadian because as a fellow Canadian, I should know the pronunciation to one of the best Canadian wrestlers of his generation, but I do not. So anyway, he's backstage with Dunn and Marcos. They're cutting a promo. Marcos says they're going to keep the momentum going from winning Scramble Cage, and he apologizes to the Carnage crew for knocking them out of Ring of Honor for, I think it was either 60 or 90 days by making them take the fall in that match, which was the stip. But he says, we had to do what we had to do. They go for a 3-way high five, but Generico misses. So, man, just a quick, short, goofy promo kind of continuing to build the upcoming Carnage crew, Ring Crew Express feud.
It's noteworthy.
The one thing I will say was...
sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, the one thing I thought was funny was Marco saying they're going to keep the momentum going from winning Scramble Cage, where I think the show after they won Scramble Cage, they wrestled Fast Eddie and Matt Sydal, a team that had never been together before, and lost immediately to them, and then the team immediately broke up. So, I don't know if their momentum is still as high as it was.
Yeah, they don't have momentum. That's how that works. But I will say it was noteworthy how, not understandable, but noteworthy, how much a smaller Generico was at the time. How much, bulk he's put on since then. That's, just nothing good or bad about it. Just it was notable.
And one thing I know, I didn't realize that, I guess you get so used to watching him in WWE, which still is to some degree the land of big guys. But when later in the night when he wrestles, I was shocked at how much taller he was than everyone else in the ring. Granted, some of the guys in that, Homicide, the Ring Crew Express, not exact. Well, actually, I think Dunn's not short, but he definitely seemed taller than pretty much everyone in the ring. And yeah, maybe that's why he was hired by WWE before Kevin Steen was. He's so tall. So that brings us to the opening match of the first round and the opening match of the show. The Trios Tournament first round match, Generation Next of Austin Aries, Jack Evans, and Roderick Strong defeated Anthony Franco, Davey Andrews, and Shane Hagedorn in 1 minute, 12 seconds via a triple pin. All three members of Generation Next hit moves in succession, each on a different member of the Ring of Honor students. Jack Evans did the 630, Aries did the Brain Buster, and Roderick Strong, I think, did basically a crucifix into a backbreaker. And Matt, it's so always weird when I throw to you for thoughts on a match when the match is 1 minute long, but that is exactly what I'm doing. What did you think of this incredible, epic 1 minute, 12-second match?
It's about as much of a squash as you could possibly get. Strong just destroys everyone with backbreakers and chops. Andrews, I think, gets one suplex on him. Andrews has a mohawk here, which I did not ever remember being a thing, but apparently it was. And, then Generation X hit all their finishers, get the pin. I would say in his brief display of offense, Strong looked pretty good. That's pretty much the only thing you could say about the match.
Yeah, I definitely think in the recent shows, Strong is starting to get a little more, I don't know if it's confidence or just more comfortable.
Yeah, I would say so.
Notice him more.
Confidence, skill. Definitely. Yeah. Clearly Gabe is noticing it too. He's being featured more. I think his look is better. He's in better shape. His hair and his trunks are more flattering on him than the stuff he was wearing for most of 2004. I think that's part of it. I think, this is, 2005 is his breakout year, so it makes sense that he is breaking out.
So, not much to talk about in the match because it was just a minute squash, but I guess there is something we should talk about now, which is probably, there was a lot of weirdly noteworthy things on this show for a show that's not that well remembered, I think, but, I think the biggest one is the commentary situation because although it did not happen in this match, the commentary had a big change because this was the first ever show that Dave Prazak did commentary for Ring of Honor. And, he's going to be gone for the next two shows. Mark Nolte has two more shows left after this one, the next two shows. But then after that, Dave Prazak becomes the regular announcer for Ring of Honor, and he'll be with us for the rest of our run after we've seen so many commentators come and go, Matt. And
Yep.
the way they handled commentary on the show was strange because they kind of had they kept almost basically had a 3-man rotation that kept changing throughout the night because it was always two people commenting at one point, but during this match, Gabe says, I'm supposed to be joined by CM Punk, but he's not here. Punk shows up a minute later and says he's in one of those famous CM Punk moods, he says. He says his eyesight is horrible. He has 80% vision in his left eye. He can't wear contacts. He has a scratched cornea, a pulled hamstring. And I love, he adds a beat-up girlfriend. Like, that's his last thing after a pulled hamstring. He says, I also have a very large chip on his shoulder. And so basically the next match is when Prazak comes in, and so throughout the night, some matches it's Punk and Prazak commentating. Some it's Punk and Gabe. Some it's Prazak and Gabe commentating. And this is not the first time Prazak has worked in Ring of Honor because we've seen him on Midwest shows doing backstage interviewing as well as ring announcing. But in terms of being a commentator, this was the first show for him.
And immediately the best commentator they've had. And, especially the matches that he does with Punk, probably the best commentator team they've had so far. We're getting very close to the era where we will have nothing to say about the commentary. I feel like it's coming in the not too distant future. Once Gabe and Punk no longer are doing commentary, there's, Prazak is not the type, at least on his ROH performances, to try to make funny or amusing comments, and neither is Lenny Leonard. So the era of us commentating on the commentary, enjoy it while it lasts, because we don't have too many more shows like that.
I still remember how excited people were when Dave Prazak came onto the commentary team. And I guess to give some background for people that I imagine most of our listeners know who Dave Prazak is, but you never know who's listening. So just in case, Dave Prazak, he, big wrestling fan. He's probably best known today. Well, definitely I would say best known today for being the founder of Shimmer, which is, the big U.S. women's wrestling indie. And obviously our friends do Shimmer Herstory, the podcast about that. So you can get a lot more information about it there. But he's always been a big champion of women's wrestling. But at this point, he was best known. He hadn't quite yet started Shimmer as the commentator for IWA Mid-South, among other indies. And previous to that, he had done a little bit of managerial work. He had his own wrestling newsletter at one point. And Prazak, around this time, I would say we used to consider probably one of the best, if not the best, commentator in indie wrestling. And Matt, I'm going to admit something right now. I was always a little bit disappointed by Dave Prazak's Ring of Honor commentary. I feel like he is still one of the best commentators Ring of Honor has ever had, and I thought his commentary was still solid. But I think people were so excited about Dave Prazak because if you've never listened to his IWA Mid-South commentary, which is kind of where he first made his name, IWA Mid-South was a company where they were a little more laid back. They didn't have not every match was about pushing these intricate storylines, and everyone didn't have a character and all. There were storylines and angles in IWA Mid-South, but there was also just a lot of mammoth marathon long shows. Oftentimes Prazak would just commentate without a regular partner, and it would just be a rotating crew of whatever wrestlers felt like had an opening to commentate for a couple of matches with him during the show. And Prazak, what made him great was he was really good at being kind of like a laid back, like feeling like he was your friend just watching the shows with you, where he would crack jokes, but he would also still have a lot of knowledge and be able to take things seriously at the right point. Some people didn't like him because they felt like if it was a match that he didn't like, maybe a hardcore match that he wasn't too into, he might do too many inside jokes and crack jokes and not pay enough respect to the match. Sometimes with his friends, he might get a little into inside jokes, but I felt like normally Prazak did a really good job with that. And I felt like Ring of Honor, a lot of people really didn't like Gabe's commentary. I think we're on the record on this show as being that, well, Gabe was not a great commentator. I don't think we feel he was as bad as a lot of people did. But for a long time on the message board, I remember as a lurker of the Ring of Honor message board, people would just say, get rid of Gabe. Please bring in Dave Prazak. Please bring in Dave Prazak. And I had watched a little bit of IWA Mid-South, so I knew how good he could be. And so when I saw he got brought in, I was so excited. And I think something I realized watching these early shows he does is you were not going to get the IWA Mid-South Dave Prazak, because Ring of Honor was a show that asked a promotion that asked something different from him. Like you mentioned, he wasn't going to do a lot of joking on these shows. Ring of Honor is a quote unquote serious promotion. That's one of the reasons I liked it, but it was all about really doing the hard sell of angles, of faces and heels, of acting like everything was a big important moment. Laid back isn't a phrase you would use to describe Ring of Honor. And also I think one other thing that maybe took a little from Prazak, and then I know this is a long-winded thing, but I will just say is I think he did lose a little something commentating shows not live in the building. And I feel like that's something, no commentator I think is going to be quite as good as they are live as in a setting where they're doing post-produced commentary days or weeks after the show. And I felt like Prazak did lose a little bit on that. He didn't quite have the same energy. Some commentators can fake it better. I think Lenny Leonard is a commentator we'll see when he comes in later this year. I think he does a better job of kind of adapting to that. But overall, even though that sounds really harsh, all I just said about Prazak, I would still say still one of the best commentators Ring of Honor ever had, and still a good commentator. But I do feel like anyone that's judging him just for his Ring of Honor work, you should go back and see on something like independentwrestling.tv. They have a lot of old IWA Mid-South shows. You do get a completely kind of different look at Dave Prazak. Like, he has different skills that he doesn't get to show in Ring of Honor commentary.
Yeah, the simple way to say it is just he's much more muted on the ROH shows. Like, he's just, he's not there to be the show at all. Like, he's not there to be the entertainment, which a lot of times the commentators are there to be the entertainment. I would say, like, in some ways, like, in the old days more than now, commentators were the entertainment. Like, if you were listening to Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, they were a large part of the entertainment. Like, you can watch, like, WrestleMania 4 and be entertained, and it's much less what's going on in the ring and much more like the interaction between Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura, right? And like, nowadays WWE commentary isn't really like that at all, right? A little AEW sometimes, but WWE really not at all, right? And ROH never, I don't think, wanted the commentary to be the entertainment, except when CM Punk was on commentary. I think he was definitely trying to be entertaining. And with ROH, you would just, like, the entertainment value for the first 3 years was just, kind of finding, like, weird and bad and like bizarre things that the commentators would say, but not super intentionally. When Dave Prazak came in, he was clearly tasked with just, like, being there, describing the action, not making a show of himself. And, for a few months when he was still working with Punk and Gabe, it didn't completely take. But once he started working with Lenny Leonard, who sort of had the same MO, at least in the early years, that's what happened to ROH commentary. It just blended into the background. That's why I say it's not going to be for much longer that we're going to talk about ROH commentary, because when we get to those mid 2005 and 2006 shows, they go out of their way to not make themselves the show. They are just there to describe the action, and they do it in a very sober and straightforward way. And that is very different from what we've been dealing with. So that's why I say not much more time for us to make fun of the commentary.
And also, I guess one more thing I would say is probably, once we get into the Lenny Leonard era, even though he takes a break at one point, but, like, it's one of the first times I feel like in Ring of Honor history where Prazak and Leonard will actually get, like, the room to be a pair of commentators for the promotion that actually gets to develop something resembling chemistry. Like, because there's been so many changes in the commentary in Ring of Honor, and when guys did get the runs together, they don't always fit well together. Like, Prazak and Leonard, are two guys that are good at commentary that do, I think, eventually kind of settle into, like, a familiarity that's comfortable with each other.
Yeah, and, they say Gabe and Doug Gentry, like, they had some degree of chemistry. They just, neither of them were, like, particularly good commentators. They just, they had their charm, though. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot, like, I don't think Gabe and Mark Nolte have chemistry. I think that they got something, but
it seemed like at first they might have had chemistry, like the first show, and it seems like it went down, like they lost chemistry throughout the run.
Yeah, and I think Punk and Gabe have something, just because Punk likes to mess with Gabe so much.
Yeah, occasionally when Punk makes Gabe laugh, like that there's a bit of a charm to that, because he does seem like one of the few guys that can kind of like make him break occasionally, which is always a cute thing.
Yeah, and of course, Donnie B and Steve Corino. No, just kidding.
I love that Corino, even on his shoot interview, he was like, "Yeah, Donnie B, we didn't have chemistry." Like he outright says, Corino outright says it, like just, "Yeah, we didn't work together."
What can you say?
Yeah, so that's that. So it's a little bit of conversation, but I do think it is kind of an important milestone in Ring of Honor history. We go to the Trios Tournament, another first-round match. Steve Corino and the Second City Saints of CM Punk and Colt Cabana defeated the Embassy of Jimmy Rave, Oman Tortuga, and the Weapon of Mass Destruction number 3 with Prince Nana in their corner in 4:57 when Punk made Weapon of Mass Destruction number 3 submit to, quote, a variation of the Anaconda Vice. I think people, if you watch this match, you will see Punk basically got him in a headlock, and the weapon submitted before he could do anything else with it, and then afterwards, where he continues to hold him in the hole, he's like, "Oh yeah, I gotta do the Anaconda Vice," and then starts to try and like maneuver his arm, but basically he submits to a headlock. Matt, I'm going to give this match to you too for the first reaction, just because you didn't get much to say with the first match. But one thing I want.
Thanks. I got a lot to say on this one. No, just kidding.
I know, just a bounty here, but I wanted to say I tried to find out who the Weapon of Mass Destruction number 3 was, and there's probably some obvious place where it was, but I could not. So I did. I turned to our friends at An Honorable Mention, that podcast. I shot them a DM. I asked them, "Do you know who it was?" And Shane Hagedorn, despite, as you can see, wrestling on the show and also filming this show, he did not remember. He said, "Send me a picture I might recall." He's fairly sure that it was H.C. Loke. From the time wearing a mask.
Yeah, you know what? That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
So, so don't put Shane or me as 100% saying that, but definitely it kind of seems. We'll talk about later H.C. Loke, even though in storyline he was banned from working Ring of Honor for a period of time. He was backstage working the show. So yeah, it does check out that it makes, and his body does. I mean, it's a bigger guy with a bit of a stomach. It does make sense that it could be H.C. Loke. So,
yeah.
Matt, now with that incredible revelation, what do you think about this 5-minute match?
Well, I will say that they did have the Weapon of Mass Destruction do a lot of the work for the heel team. So it does make sense that it would be Loke, because Loke is a bit of a workhorse, and a vet of ROH. So I feel confident in that making a lot of sense. But yeah, I don't know. They did some moves. Punk Goes right after the Embassy, right as they start coming down the ramp. He attacks Jimmy Rave, which is good, because it wouldn't make sense if he just obviously Punk should be really, really pissed off at Rave after blinding him and hitting a Rave clash on his girlfriend. So they start off the right way, but like in the match, they go after Punk's leg. Punk has it all taped up. They do a couple of like Corino gets a little like a mini hot tag. He takes down all the Embassy members, does a neckbreaker DDT combo on Oman and the Weapon of Mass Destruction. Corino gets his own like version of that. Basically the baby faces get a few chances to run wild. Punk tag. Rave is always trying to run away from Punk, but Punk gets him and rams him into the corner, punches him repeatedly in the face, choking him. He's yelling, "I'm gonna fucking kill you. You understand me? You're a dead man." which, hey, that makes sense. So good job there. So nothing wrong with the match, but nothing particularly right with it. Actually, maybe I'm actually being too generous. I thought it was not a very good match. It was kind of crappy, but I liked, it did get over that Punk was trying to kill Rave.
I almost don't judge the match. I almost feel like it was more of an angle than the match. Because, the whole point of this match wasn't to have an entertaining match, although they did wrestle a bit. But it was all from Punk attacking Rave as he makes the entrance to not even letting him get into the ring at first to, like you said, telling he's going to fucking kill him, choking him with his boot. This match was all just a way to further the Punk Embassy feud and show how much Punk hates Jimmy Rave. The credit I will give to Punk is for people who hate in wrestling when a heel does something bad to the face, and then the next time encounter each other, they just do like a lockup or a regular high impact wrestling moves. Punk doesn't do any of that. As soon as he sees Rave make the entrance, he goes and attacks him. He throws punches. He chokes him with a boot. He screams at him, as Matt said. He treats this like you should treat somebody if you absolutely hate their guts and want to just destroy them for attacking your girlfriend and blinding you. So, but again, because of that, it's kind of like, and it only lasting 5 minutes. It feels like more of an angle than them trying to give you an entertaining, really full-fledged match, which you can get away with if you have some other really good matches on a show. We'll see if they can get away with it on this show. Do you have something to say, Matt?
No, I know. I was going to say, yeah, you're right. It's a bit of an angle. I will say this, though. I can't think of too many ROH shows that start off with two lesser matches than the two that start, back to back. And actually, maybe I should have held that till after the next match because, that's, well, let's talk about the next match, I guess. But go ahead. Sorry.
So, after the match, Punk refuses to break the Anaconda Vice until Colt Cabana steps in to get him to break it. And I guess the one other thing to mention is, the reason why we had a weapon of mass destruction number 3 instead of Diablo Santiago is because you might just make the obvious assumption Diablo Santiago was hurt. Yes, he was. So it couldn't work. But we cut to backstage where Samoa Joe is standing with Bryan Danielson and Vordell Walker. That's his team for tonight. Joe talks about how winning the chance to book any match he wants would be the first step towards his goal of becoming the first ever Ring of Honor Triple Crown champ. Joe at this point cues Vordell to talk, but Danielson immediately just steps in front of him and barges in before Vordell can get a word out. Danielson says all he wants tonight is for his team and Homicide's team to meet in the second round so that he and Homicide can fight some more. At this point, Sugar Sean Price runs in and he says, Jay Lethal's been messed up really bad. You guys gotta help. All of them run down the hall. They find Jay Lethal's laying on the ground. He's got a black eye. Jay says someone hit him from behind, but he didn't get to see who. Matt, the thing I'll mention here is Jay Lethal does have a black eye, and that apparently is a legit black eye. In doing research, he apparently got a legit black eye from Homicide in an NWA New Jersey show they had done the night before. So I guess they just decided to incorporate that into the show tonight.
And they did it in a clever way, and it actually does pay off in future shows, so I liked it.
Yeah.
I didn't like that he had a black eye. That's, but
we're not in favor of black eyes through the years. But
no. I want Jay Lethal's eye to be nice and healthy.
Yes, exactly. Our third match in the Trios Tournament first round, the Rottweilers of Homicide, Vicky Reyes, and Rocky Romero, with Julius Smokes in their corner, defeated El Generico and the Ring Crew Express of Denon Marcos in 8 minutes, 45 seconds, when Homicide pins El Generico after hitting a lariat. So the interesting thing in the booking of this was originally Ring of Honor even announced on their website that it was going to be the Carnage Crew of Logan DeVito and BJ Whitmer versus the Rottweilers, but the whole idea was since the Carnage Crew was out of Ring of Honor for 90 days for taking the fall in the Scramble Cage match that the Ring Crew Express won, they couldn't be booked, and it is a nice little booking thing. They got replaced by the guys that beat them and got them sent out of Ring of Honor for 90 days, Denon Marcos and El Generico.
Well, that doesn't explain Whitmer, though. No, I'm just
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You don't have to know where BJ Whitmer's whereabouts was on this night. It's okay.
God damn it! I should have researched more. No, I would say this is the most substantial match of the night thus far, but that isn't saying much because it's still a fairly slight match. I mean, it's not even 9 minutes.
It's like it's like a WWF '90s Jobber to the Stars match.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about this match would be, The first half of the match is everyone kind of pairing off and each doing like a sequence, with one guy and then tagging out and doing a new sequence. And everyone on the El Generico Ring Crew Express team from the first half of the match kind of holds their own in their sequence at first. So you go, wow, like I thought this was going to be another, 3-minute squash. And instead, they actually get to go kind of 50-50 with them at first. But then in the second half of the match, Marcos gets isolated for a minute or two. We get a hot tag, and then we get the finish, and we get a big definitive win. So by the end, they lose still in under 9 minutes. Talking about El Generico, this is our first time really to get to see him on Through the Years. He was only 20 at this point. It's hard to really make much of a judgment because do you think he got maybe 60 to 90 seconds of ring time maybe in this whole match?
Right, yeah.
He basically just did a few offensive moves, but I did think his moves looked good. Like he definitely looked like he fit in the 60 to 90 seconds he had. And again, remember, he's only 20 years old at this point. I would say the match was decently entertaining, like slightly above average, but again, going to what you said, we've probably have never seen a Ring of Honor show open with like 2 matches so unsubstantial, and then this one, wasn't enough more to really, again, we're now kind of 3 matches into this show and 3 matches into this tournament, and we haven't really seen something that felt like a real honest attempt at like a meaty match, so to speak.
Yeah, man. Sami Zayn, another wrestler I just realized is younger than me. Oh boy. But when you said that, he's a year younger than me. But so that means he's your age. This was another match. That's what I was going to say. Like, it's actually 3 matches in a row that were very like completely unsubstantial, I guess is what I would say. Just so that's why I thought like this show really wasn't off to a great start. Like it was just 3 nothing, kind of nothing matches here. I wonder if the trios tournament would have been better if they had like really went for it in like a lot of the matches in the first round instead of just one of them. But yes, one of the most noteworthy things, honestly, in the match was Gabe calling Dunn by his full name. At one point, he calls him Kevin Dunn. He did. He did that right. I forgot that. Yeah. Is his name Kevin Dunn? Is it the Kevin Dunn? No, just kidding. Maybe it's Devin. Maybe it's Devin Dunn.
I think it's Kevin. I'll look it up. But do you think? I think that is. If so, do you think that's why he was just done? Like, although I guess he didn't ever said Marcos's full name either, for that matter.
Yeah, I think maybe the only thing I could think of is that because they were trying to do a little more with the Ring Crew Express at this point, that maybe they were going to decide to make them like full people, like do an opposite Vince McMahon, where they're like, we want to get this guy over, so we're going to give him a first name instead of taking it away. But yeah, honestly, that was the most noteworthy thing of the match. And I guess, and El Generico being there and doing a couple good like cross bodies and stuff. But the other thing I noticed, Homicide, in the finish, the lariat that he hit Generico with from behind was weak, like very weak for Homicide. And I don't know if it was just miscommunication or what, but then he hit him with a more like normal good lariat after that and got the win. Nothing bad, but just not much of a match. I thought Romero was continuing to show more charisma. That's always good, but just another not much of a match.
The impression I got from watching that, I wonder if you agree, is that the first lariat was supposed to be the finish, but Generico wasn't facing Homicide, and so Homicide kind of pulled up because maybe he didn't want to throw a lariat to a guy that maybe he was wondering, is he even expecting this? But then after he hits that lariat, it's like I almost felt like he was like, okay, now that you know what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit you with what should have been the finish to begin with. But maybe that's me overthinking things, but it kind of looked a little bit awkward in that sense.
Makes sense.
So Matt, okay, it is in fact Kevin Dunn, is Dunn for Dunn, Marcos' full name. Do you know what Marcos' first name is? A little bit of trivia here.
I was trying to think if there was like a famous wrestling figure whose last name was also Marcos and give him that name, but no, and I would just be
a video game character, Nintendo character,
Samus Marcos, Link Marcos,
Kirby Marcos.
Oh, nice! It's a good name.
Yes, Kirby Marcos and Kevin Dunn. So that is, in fact, their full names. I knew that at one point, but I'd long forgotten it. Now I probably did
too. Yeah.
So that brings us to the final match of the first round of the Trios tournament. Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, and Vordell Walker defeated James Gibson, Nigel McGuinness, and Spanky in 23 minutes, 49 seconds when Joe made Spanky tap out to the rear naked choke. Matt, before I go to you, we get a match to sink our teeth into.
I get to actually talk about a match this time.
Yeah, I'll give you some thoughts about what some other people thought about the match and see you can compare and contrast how you feel. First off, going back to Gabe Sapolsky from his comments to the Torch on the show, he said, regarding the six-man tag main event with Samoa Joe, Spanky, James Gibson, and American Dragon, and by the way, that is not the main event, Torch, Gabe says, this was the standout match of the tournament, and it was just great stuff. Samoa Joe and Bryan Danielson are among the elite workers right now and true stars in Ring of Honor. James Gibson is so good and is a huge addition to the Ring of Honor roster and someone I see as a main eventer for us for as long as he wants to be in Ring of Honor. Spanky is an invaluable addition and is back to being motivated the way he was in 2002 before WWE killed his spirit, so it is great to have him back. Nigel McGuinness is truly breaking out to the next level, and Vordell Walker is the best prospect in wrestling right now. You put these six in the same match, and you can't go wrong. And then we'll go quickly to The Observer, which is clearly just repeating things that Gabe said, because this sounds very similar. Dave wrote, best match was said to be Joe and Danielson and Walker's first round win over Spanky and James Gibson and Nigel McGuinness. With all the recent WWE signings, Dave writes, it's kind of amazing that Nigel McGuinness, who is tall, has a good physique, and can work great, fell through the cracks. Gibson has been said to have been super impressive. Not that he does anything spectacular, but everything he does is good. And Spanky is getting back to his old form before WWE beat his love for the business out of him. So I think Dave's just telling everyone at this point, yeah, WWE beat Spanky's love for the business out of him. But Matt, what did you think? Do you think maybe, I don't know if this gives away, I mean, whatever, it's not a spoiler. You're going to hear the whole rest of the podcast if you're listening. But
yeah, they're going to stop listening if they find out now.
I mean, do you think this was the best match of the tournament?
Yes. Easy yes for me. But yeah, I'll talk about the match. It was, you know, they really went for it, like, which I appreciated. I don't think there was any other match in the tournament, and possibly some of that was because of the ring breaking in the next match. But I don't think there was any match in the tournament where they like went for it as much as they did in this match. Like, really just decided we're going to have a really good match, and they did. When Spanky's music hit, someone in the crowd yells very audibly, "Best song ever!" Like, it's a good song. I mean, I like it, but, you know, I don't know. There was the obligatory SmackDown sucks chant, which I guess you have to have whenever James Gibson and or Spanky is there. But my favorite part, honestly, as good as the match was, my favorite part was at the beginning when Dave Prazak is like, "I'm in the booth because Jimmy Bauer had to use the bathroom." I was like, what?
I couldn't come up with a better excuse.
I don't know if that was like a prank or what, but like maybe he really did. Maybe he was like, he had the runs, and Prazak was just like, I'm gonna say that. It happens. Do you know what happens to people?
I mean, it does.
But
has that ever happened? Can you remember of an instance where that's ever happened in a live wrestling show?
Where someone had to like leave the booth to take a shit? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, as a Vancouver Canucks hockey fan, there was once a playoff game where our star goalie Roberto Luongo did not come out for overtime, and everyone was like, "Oh God, he's gotten hurt." And then he came out like minutes later, and it was like, no, he had like diarrhea. He had to go to the bathroom.
Well, I think what happens to wrestlers, based on urban legends, I think they just shit their pants. Or go under the ring.
All of Andre the Giant's career is just stories about that.
But it's remarkably, I cannot think of a moment where that's happened to an announcer in any capacity. It's crazy to think, but maybe people just don't eat until after the show just because they're afraid that might happen. Or maybe people in wrestling just happen to have really, you know, good regular bowel movements. Anyway, we've been on this too long. But Punk and Prazak are on commentary, which to me is like, it's probably the best ROH commentary team they've had up until this point. Like, they have good chemistry even when Prazak's not being like full Prazak. You know, Prazak is still doing a good, like, professional job of calling the match. Punk is good. He's entertaining. You know, he was good when he was at commentary on WWE also. I think they would probably, if a company could get him back, even if it was just to do commentary, I feel like they'd benefit from it. Now, I mean, even if he doesn't want to wrestle. But anyway, we get some cool stuff. These cool, like they do a lot of these like pair-offs. Like early on, we get Gibson versus Danielson, and the crowd is really into it. Danielson, for the record, is back to wearing his like maroon trunks and boots instead of the black trunks and the kick pads. I guess that kind of indicates that he's not going to do that style in this match with the kicking and stuff. But Punk is talking about how, oh God, another commentary moment I forgot about. Punk is talking about how Joe is mentoring Walker like he did Lethal. And Punk, and I quote, this is a CM Punk quote, seems like Joe's got a thing for the young kids. That's CM Punk, not me. That has to be like he's messing with Joe, right?
Yeah, I mean, Joe was one of his best friends at this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if Punk is not smart enough to realize what that sounds like, I would be shocked.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something. But, so like Danielson and Gibson pair off, then Joe and McGuinness pair off, and then, they do their stuff, and then Nigel and Danielson pair off for the first time in ROH history, which is on its own a historic moment, and they're they do a pretty good job in the stuff that they have here. They kind of show a little bit of that chemistry that they clearly have. We even get some Danielson versus Spanky. So all these pair offs, I think, are a really fun way to start the match. All these pair offs really that everyone wants to see. And really most of them involve Danielson. Danielson versus Gibson, Danielson versus Nigel, Danielson versus Spanky. Then Gibson and Vordell pair off. And, I have to say, as much as Gabe puts him over, it is amazing to see Vordell Walker in this mix. Not because, I'm not assessing his talent level. I'm just assessing his stature in wrestling, looking back now. And it is, obviously nothing compared to anybody in this match. So it's interesting to see him in there. It's definitely one of these things is not like the other kind of moment. And again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm insulting Vordell Walker. It's just, very clearly, certain people, the rest of them have much bigger legacies in wrestling. But Nigel does a pretty cool move. He snapmares Vordell so his leg hits the ropes when he flips over. I thought that was pretty cool. Vordell doesn't really get a lot of offense in on Nigel because he's chopping Nigel, but Nigel kind of hulks up and forearms him. Then Nigel does his headstand, and Vordell goes to charge at him, but Spanky cuts him off. Then Gibson stops Danielson, so Joe goes and kicks Nigel in the headstand, but Nigel avoids that and kicks Joe out of the ring. And then a minute later, Nigel does the headstand again to sucker in Joe, but Vordell pops in the ring and drop kicks Nigel while he's in the headstand. So I liked the way that they played with the whole headstand thing. It made Nigel look like a star because he was the focus of the match, and it actually gave Vordell a moment to get one over on Nigel. So that was pretty good. And then Vordell does a standing moonsault. So this is, definitely Vordell looks better here than he did in that one match against Joe. He's still obviously the weak link in the match, but he is definitely, I'd say, he looks a lot better here than he did. The match keeps going. There's a spot where, Joe is, Joe is working on Nigel, and he gives him that running boot scrape thing that he does in the corner, and he does it, but he kicks Gibson, who's on the outside of the ring, and Gibson doesn't sell it, and I was really confused. And Punk tries to explain, well, what happened was Gibson jumped off the apron to move Nigel. But it didn't really seem like it looked that way. I think that was just a botch, but it was weird because it was Joe clearly kicked Gibson and Gibson just kind of walked away. It's rare for those two guys to make such an obvious botch because they are, really good. So then it turns into another, schmaz. Danielson does the airplane spin. He's spinning Spanky, so he kicks McGuinness in the head, and he keeps going. Then he drops Spanky and does the airplane spin on Gibson, and Gibson kicks both McGuinness and Spanky. But then, since he's so dizzy, he does the airplane spin on Vordell. So they even got some comedy in the match. The best part is when he tries to do one on Joe, but Joe is too heavy, and Danielson keeps trying. And so then Danielson stops, stands up, looks at Joe, and then just falls over on his back.
And it gets like genuine laughs from the crowd. And the best part is Joe's reaction, like when Danielson's trying to lift him up, like he just stands there like with no expression, like, God damn, like just what are you doing, buddy? Like,
I didn't mind the comedy in a match like this. You know, it's a first round match. The crowd loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I really liked that. So then we get Joe actually chasing Spanky around the ring, and Spanky pulls Mary Kate, the photographer, the one who found the Tom McGee versus Bret Hart match, in the way, like, you know, very very like Macho Man with Elizabeth style, like just pulling her in front of him, and so that was a cute
roughly too.
Yeah,
it wasn't like, oh, he's hurting her, but I was surprised, like kind of rough pulling her, I thought.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. Like that's. I mean, you know, maybe they knew they were going to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. But so Vordell has a pretty cool spot where he holds Spanky up like in a wheelbarrow position, and while he's in that position, he kicks him in the chest and then hits the Ocean Cyclone suplex. You know, I don't think Vordell looked bad here at all. Joe's working over Spanky. Spanky does the surfboard. I mean, Danielson does a surfboard on Spanky, while Joe and Vordell knock Spanky's teammates off the apron, but Gibson does get in to break it up. Spanky actually hits a flatliner on Danielson and gets the hot tag to Gibson, and Gibson is just like so into this hot tag. He's just doing all the big moves, the suplexes on Vordell. At that point, I kind of lose track of who the legal man is on Joe's team. But you know, they do a bunch of big spots. Danielson whips Gibson, but Gibson just dives through the ropes to tope Joe. Then Danielson goes to run the ropes, but Nigel pulls it down, so Danielson falls outside of the ring. Gibson then goes for a top rope drop kick, but he kind of slips, so he lands a standing drop kick instead. Vordell hits an over-the-head belly-to-belly and a cabrata, but Gibson goes for the choke, and Joe cuts him off. Vordell comes in the ring, gets a German suplex on Gibson for 2. So I guess at that point I'm like, I guess Vordell is legal. I don't know, because he tagged in Danielson. Then we get Danielson and Nigel, and they trade big European uppercuts. And in a big moment, for the very first time ever in ROH, Nigel McGuinness hits the rebound / jawbreaker, whatever you want to call it, lariat, although it's to the back. But still, it counts, and he gets 2 on that. And I actually say the first time he ever did it, it's pretty good move, even then. Like, it looked good.
It's interesting seeing it, too, because we saw, like, 1 or 2 shows ago, I think when he was wrestling Colt Cabana, he does the rebound off the ropes, but then he does just, like, a takedown into a pin out of it. And it's almost like he was kind of figuring out, like, oh, this is cool, but what if I did this with it? And then, like you said, yeah, this time it's the first rebound layer, but even here, he's doing it from behind. It's like he's kind of figuring it out, like, match by match. Oh, like, I could do it this way, and this would probably be the best way. And
it doesn't become one of his main moves for a long time after this, at least a few months. Nigel he gets put in the cattle mutilation, but on the way down, Nigel tags in Spanky, which I thought was a cool spot, so Spanky breaks up the cattle mutilation with a frog splash. And Joe comes in, slaps Spanky a bunch of times. Spanky goes for the sliced bread number 2, but Joe pulls him down and gets him right into the choke. And Vordell and Danielson run interference, and Spanky taps out. So there were a couple of minorly sloppy moments, but I just thought this match was full of just fun sequences. Good previews of future cool stuff. Just a lot of fun stuff. Like I said, Vordell, he didn't fit in per se, but he was fine. He had some good moments, and I thought, the other 5 just really carried it to pretty high level. So I thought it was a very, very good match.
Yeah, I thought this was the best match of the tournament too. If I had to give it like a rating, I would probably give it like 3.5 to 3 3/4, like right around there. Which is tipping my hat what I feel about the rest of the tournament, if that's my match of the tournament. But I mean, it's a very good, pretty darn good match, and
I just think it's so much fun. Like that's what I really,
yeah, it's. You know what I think that, and I've used this description a couple times before, but you know what it felt like to me was like when people always go to a WWE house show and they say, "Oh man, like these really talented guys, you could tell they were just having fun and kind of making it up." Like like that's what this is. It's just like so many really talented guys, and there's not really a story to this match. There's no face heel structure. Obviously, there's no feuds in this match. It feels like five really talented guys and Vordell Walker, who's not terrible, but certainly not on their level, and they're just kind of making things up and having a good time and just enjoying like, oh, we get to work with each other. We get to we have a lot of time. We get to do whatever. And there's a little bit of everything. Like you mentioned, you like the comedy, and I agree. Like I felt like it was not a comedy match, but I liked that there was some comedy within it, with like Nigel keeps getting hit by the airplane spin. Like I felt like there was a little bit of everything in this match. There was like some smooth mat work, a little bit of comedy. There was a little bit of moves off the top rope. There was some hard hitting, some grappling. Like you got a little bit of everything, and it was fun. I guess it just doesn't rise to that great level because it really did feel just kind of like guys going out there and having fun and not really trying to do an incredible match. The other thing I will say is I felt like Nigel was the star of this match, which is really impressive when you consider the other talent in this match, like Joe Danielson, maybe two of the best workers of their era. And Vordell Walker, I will say, I don't think he looked bad in this match, apart from one point near the end where he's selling Dizzy in the ring, and James Gibson goes up to the top to do that top rope move, and you can tell Vordell, like while he's selling, walks away to the center of the ring, and James Gibson sees that, and he has to like drop down and just run over and do like a running drop kick. You can tell like that's kind of like a rookie mistake where Gibson was clearly expecting him to be in a position, and he just takes himself out of it. But I mean, that's just a rookie move. But overall, Vordell Walker, he didn't do anything wrong in this match, but what I would say is I found like you said, this match, there's a lot of fun, and basically any combination of workers in this match is pretty fun, except I felt like every time Vordell Walker got in the match, the momentum just stopped. And even the crowd got quieter, and granted, he's also a relative unknown.
Yeah, lack of star power was a big part of that too, yeah.
But I just felt like every time he tagged back out, he didn't get to do that much in this match. The match picked right back up again. And I hate to use this criticism because I feel like so many people use this criticism for wrestlers I like, and it's kind of a hack criticism. But Vordell Walker kind of feels to me at this point like a video game creator wrestler, where he's kind of got like a bunch of different elements, but I don't really know who he is. Like, he does a bit of MMA stuff. He has the MMA gloves. He does the big kicks. He does some like cool Japanese suplexes, like the Ocean Cyclone suplex. He can do a little bit of flying. He does some moonsaults here. He'll throw some hard strikes, and even his look, he's just the muscular, bald-headed guy with, again, the MMA gloves. Like, I feel like he's just this mishmash mix of things. That's kind of like, I've seen him in a couple matches, and obviously he hasn't had a lot of time to really show himself so far in Ring of Honor. But if someone asked me after these couple performances, like, what makes Vordell Walker, what's unique about him, I still don't really have an answer. Like, I don't know what he is, which is probably not a great sign for, like, introducing him to people.
But on that, at the same time, in his defense, isn't this still really just his second match in ROH?
Yes, I mean, obviously he had a pre-show match, which apparently from the live reports was his best performance. And then he had the Joe match as part of the Foley angle, which, what was that, like 3 minutes? And it was basically him getting squashed. And then this, which he doesn't get that much ring time in this match. Like, it's a 23 or whatever minute match, but really he's kept it on very short bursts, I would say.
But I want to defend him here, because he's in a really tough spot to be in with like these top level, like some of the best wrestlers in the world at the time in this match. And he's still very new. And he's asked to, like, doing a 6-man match with lots of like 3-way spots and stuff. That's like complicated. It's more complicated than doing a singles match. Like, you have to remember a lot of different things. You have to be timed correctly. And I think he holds his own. Like, I don't think he's, I think he's clearly the weak link, but I think he'd perform better than most would.
Well, I got a question for you, which is, like, if you were in a wrestler in Vordell Walker's position, like, would you want to be in a match like this? Because on one hand, people will say, look, you get the rub of teaming with Joe and Danielson, and you get to wrestle Gibson and Spanky and Nigel. He gets 3 really talented guys. But on the other hand, like, you kind of look like the odd man out. Like, it's almost like an unfair comparison,
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Put into that. in a match where you're like the one rookie with that kind of embarrassment of talent. Like even Punk in the commentary for this match early on, even he seems like really odd by just like, look at how many like really good guys are in this one match. And so like, do you think in a way that this almost hurt him, like putting him in this position to be compared to these guys in his second match, and really in a sense, his first real main card match in Ring of Honor?
I think it could have hurt him. If it was me, I absolutely would not want to be in that position. But at the same time, I guess that, someone who becomes a star in like an entertainment business probably has a lot of confidence, right? And so they're like, yeah, put me in there. I can do it. And I don't think this match hurt him because I don't think he did badly enough to have that happen. I think he did fine considering. And I think he got out of this match certainly at no worse of a standing than he went into it.
Well, Matt, I didn't plan on coming out this way, but I got a surprise for you, Matt, because someone disagrees with you. You know who that person is? Wardell Walker. I have an interview quote.
I was going to say Kirby Marcos, but okay.
Kirby, he's sucking up things and shooting them out. No, so interview with Wardell Walker did an interview with Alan Wojcik, I think. I probably butchered that last name. I apologize for that. Alan, in this interview, asks Wardell, on March 5th, 2005, you were part of the Trios tournament with Samoa Joe and American Dragon as your partners. Please talk about working against James Gibson, Spanky, and Nigel McGuinness. And Wardell's answer I thought was interesting. I just answered, the first match in the six-man was really difficult for me. I didn't feel like I clicked with the first group of guys like the second group I wrestled against. Maybe on a different night I would have had a better showing against Gibson, Spanky, and McGuinness. Nothing against those three. I just had an off moment. Now, I'm probably not as high on his performance in this match as you are. Not that you are like crazy over the top, but at the same time, I also am probably not as negative on as Wardell seems to be because he didn't do anything really wrong in this match. So I'm kind of surprised that he outright says like, I had an off moment, I didn't click because I don't think he looked that bad.
In fact, the biggest botch that I noticed involved Joe and James Gibson. So,
Yeah, in fact, I would say Gibson had an off night, even though he was still pretty good. But for a guy that's like always, like I think his best aspect is how he's just such a crisp professional. Like he had a couple of drop kicks that didn't quite hit. He had this weird Joe spot you talked about. Like this was, of the three matches we've seen him in so far in Ring of Honor, this was easily I would say his worst performance. Not that, again, it was bad, but if anyone had an off night, yeah, like you said, it was probably Gibson. And anyway, the only other thing I want to mention in the match is there's at one point in this match where Nigel McGuinness takes a drop toe hold for Samoa Joe, and instead of dropping like right to his like stomach and face like a face first bump like everyone does, he instead just like falls right on his knee, which I actually thought was a really cool way to take a drop toe hold. And I don't know if I've ever seen too many guys do it that way, but I thought it was a cool little spot. And again, I think Nigel continues like he is really, really good. Like you can really see every match, like especially in this match, you could tell he kind of rose to the occasion where he was like, I'm working really good guys and I'm going to be just as good, or in my opinion, like better in this match than everyone else in this match.
Yeah, I remember the first ROH show I went to, which was a few months after this. And Nigel wrestled Joe on that show, and I think I left being most impressed by him because, I wasn't a super regular like watcher of all the ROH DVDs, so I'd seen a lot of like the Joe matches and some of the Punk matches, but I'd never seen a Nigel match, and I was like, man, that guy is really good. Like he could be a big star, and you could see it here.
And it's funny because we've now read multiple quotes from The Observer, and this is early 2005 before Nigel's really broken through to even be a main eventer on the indies. And this isn't, not just this episode, but there was another episode where Dave wrote, like, I can't believe Nigel hasn't been signed by WWE yet. Like, already this early on in his career, people were like, this guy seems to check every box they would want. And why don't they sign him? I guess that was kind of, in some ways, sadly, that was the kind of the story of his career, which was, why haven't they signed this guy?
We still don't know the answer to that question, do we?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad story, but yeah, he's one of those many guys where if he had come up today, he'd be signed at this point. Like if Ring of Honor was working like the way it is at the time we're covering it into 2021, like Nigel would be signed by NXT already by this point. Like we would never see the next 2 or 3 years of Nigel.
Right.
So after the match, everyone is shaking hands, and Trent Acid walks to the ring to boos from the crowd. Acid says there should be no boos for him. The fans are cheering guys that aren't even from Philly. Trent says, I'm from Philly. I made this area. He reminds us that he quit Ring of Honor recently, and because of that, he can come back whenever he wants because he's that good. I didn't know that's how quitting things work, that you can then just show up anywhere, anytime you want. But Rockin' Rebel at this point comes to the ring to try and calm Trent down. He tells him, hey, the fans shit on both of us. It ain't worth it, buddy. Spanky comes back in the ring at this point, and he says there's a reason Trent isn't wrestling for Ring of Honor, and it's because of shit like this. Trent then pie faces Spanky. The two brawl until everyone from the match that just happened come back in the ring, separate them. Trent flees to the crowd. He flips everyone off as the crowd chants, don't come back. And Matt, I'm not sure, but I don't think he ever did come back, which is funny because this angle seems to set up a Spanky Trent Acid match that I don't think we ever get.
This brings up like kind of a thread that I'm noticing in early 2005, and actually on the next DVD that we review, there's going to be more of this, which is Gabe is setting up stuff that never pays off. Like there's like, like he had clearly planned a lot of stuff for 2005 that doesn't come to fruition. Now, it seems very likely that what does end up happening in 2005 is better than a lot of this stuff that he had planned. But Mick Foley obviously doesn't play out in full. This thing with Trent Acid, after the next match, there'll be another thing. And then there's another thing on Back to Basics, the show the week after this. So it's just interesting to see. Like, I don't remember that so much in ROH of just like a lot of like kicking off of angles that never really reach a conclusion.
Yeah, and I probably should have done more research, but there's only so many hours in the day. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the story behind this Trent Acid thing is. On the surface, it feels like something Gabe was doing with other workers at this time, like with Matt Stryker, which was when a guy's push wasn't working out, he would kind of demote them but still book them only in their area, because we very briefly had the Matt Stryker run, which I don't think is over yet, where like when they worked Dayton, they would still book Matt Stryker, but they wouldn't book him anywhere else because they'd have to pay transportation or whatever. And I feel like this is kind of setting up that Trent Acid would just work Philly shows, but again, I don't think he even does that after this. So yeah, I don't know what happened, but
it's just, to me, it's just interesting because there's a few examples of this going on at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on those too, especially because I forget the one you're referencing on Back to Basics, because again, my memory is terrible. So I'll be interested in seeing what happens there that doesn't go somewhere.
Yeah, you'll be very amused when you see it.
PW Insider wrote from the live notes, at this point in the show, Allison Danger came to the ring to cut a promo stating that the prophecy would never die and would rise again. She was holding a photo of Christopher Daniels, and Mike Johnson writes, she was good going back and forth with some ringside fans. This did not make the home release. I feel like there were multiple shows I think we've covered where she did this between matches and it didn't make the home release. That was just something they were doing for the live crowds, I guess, where she would just between matches scream that, Prophecy was going to come back, blah, blah, blah. And I assume this means that she was Ring of Honor probably knew by this point that Daniels was coming back eventually, because if she's coming out holding photos of Christopher Daniels and stuff, she's, you're teasing something at this point. Next up, in a trios tournament semifinal match, the first of two of these, Generation Next of Austin Aries, Jack Evans, and Roderick Strong defeated Steve Corino and the Second City Saints of CM Punk and Colt Cabana. And 14 minutes, 48 seconds when Jack Evans pinned CM Punk after he hit the Ode to the Bulldogs. Matt, I know you placed the request. You wanted to read this, and I couldn't think of a better person to read this, so to give a little background.
What is that supposed to mean?
I just want to hear you say these names, Matt. Before the next match, Steve Corino's personal ring announcer, Brian Regal, goes to do the ring introductions, but Colt Cabana steps in. Colt says that in honor of Corino and the trios tournament, he has a list he'd like Regal to read of people Colt would like to have a three-way with. Matt, if I had known that you were going to read this, I would have not spent the time transcribing every one of these names myself as well. Thank God, though. Matt, take it away. It is a long scroll of names.
Yeah, man, it's a long list. Dude, I was just looking at it, I'm like, wow, he wants to have a three-way with so many people. You know, it's interesting to see who, like, they booed and stuff back then, because I bet a lot of them, like, would not get booed in 2021 from a wrestling audience. Like, for instance, he starts by Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. Then he says Madonna and Cher, which get a lot of boos. And I don't think people would boo Madonna and Cher now. Would you boo Madonna and Cher? I wouldn't.
No, look, I think it would be cool to have sex with Cher right now. Take that for what you will. I wouldn't say no, Matt.
Notice that you left out Madonna.
Beggars can't be choosers, but I don't know. Cher seems cool.
Yeah. Well, if you could turn back time. No.
So good. We did not plan that.
The next one is Ginger and Marianne, R.I.P. Bertha Faye and Alundra Blaze. Makes sense. Peg Bundy and Marcy Darcy. Yeah, you know what? Sounds good. Hillary and Chelsea Clinton. I feel like that would get the same exact reaction now, which is, you sick fuck.
Yes.
Kelly Kapowski and Lisa Turtle. Lillian Garcia and Mike McGurk. And then he goes through, he does these little, like, motifs. So he goes, the Gilmore Girls, the Glamour Girls, the Gilmore Girls, the Gastineau Girls, the Spice Girls, the Nitro Girls, and any girls that have gone wild. So you know what, this Colt Cabana, he's got some comedy chops right there. That was a good little run. Of all those groups, Trevor, between the Glamour Girls, the Gilmore Girls, the Gastineau Girls, the Spice Girls, the Nitro Girls, and any girls that have gone wild, what would your preference be?
Oh, you put me on the spot here. I gotta go Gilmore Girls because I love the dialogue, Matt, and I mean, technically, for all I know, I may have been with a girl that has gone wild. I don't know, Matt.
Well, you know, it's been so many, Trevor. You just got an endless list. I'm sure one of them must have.
Oh, God. What would you pick?
Well, I had to Google who the Gastineau girls were, because I don't remember that at all. But now I know. You know, it's gotta be the Glamour Girls. No, just kidding. I have a soft spot for the Spice Girls. Is that a disappointing answer?
No, I was going to say, in a sense, isn't that like the best value because you're getting like the most girls?
Well, it's a three-way, so I feel like you got to pick two of them.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Huh.
Or really, they have to pick you. And they wouldn't. So, I mean, they're, very famous people. I don't think they'd pick most of us. I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah. You're only a slight step down from David Beckham, Matt. Don't sell yourself short.
That's true. Just a slight step down. Anyway, this whole segment is much bluer than I've ever been in my life.
This episode has taken some weird turns between this and the discussion of have any announcers ever gone to the bathroom with the runs?
That's right. Well, actually, we've had that confirmed that one of them did on the show. All right, so continuing, we got Jumping Bomb Angels, Charlie's Angels. But is it the 70s Charlie's Angels or is it the 2000s Charlie's Angels? I guess they're both pretty good. The Olsen Twins, that's a hack answer. You got to admit, that's hack.
Yeah. I actually Googled just to make sure they were legal age when he did this, and they were. Not by much.
Yeah, not by much. The Sweet Valley High Twins. Now, he says, quote, the black chicks from Sister Sister, and I'm like, did he have to say black right there? I think people know who the girls from Sister Sister are, but... Yeah,
there are no other two girls that are, associated with each other from that show.
Yeah. The Duff Sisters, the Pointer Sisters, any two hot nuns, which, how would you know? And this one's my favorite, and I think everyone's favorite, B. Arthur and Estelle Getty. I think we all love the Golden Girls, do we not?
Yes.
And now... I feel like the more popular pair would be B. Arthur and Rue McClanahan. Betty White and Rue McClanahan, excuse me. But he went with the whole mother-daughter thing. I get it. Suzanne Summers, Circa Three's Company, and Suzanne Summers, Circa Step by Step, which is even more problematic probably than the mother-daughter thing. Somebody being in a threesome with themselves.
Isn't that just masturbation then?
Yeah, but if
is it even a three-way, Matt? If you do it with two people that are the same, or is it just sex? I don't know.
I don't know. You're the sex expert. You're the
only scientists can know this for sure, Matt.
You're the resident sexual dynamo in this group, so you have to answer that question.
Jesus Christ. Let's not get into that, but you know what? You might be surprised between the two of us.
Dark Journey and Sweet Sapphire, and CM Punk stops him and yells, "She's dead!" Yeah. Jackie Brown and Foxy Brown, which, okay.
That'd be my pick.
Yeah.
Of all of these, I think I would. If I could have any of these, that might be it. And again, that might not be sex. That might not be a three-way. Again, yes. Going by my new potential theory.
That's true. I mean, it's the character versus the actor, but anyway.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
April Hunter and Slick Wagner Brown, which gets Punk to, of course, in a well-timed moment, grab the mic and say, "Don't hate, appreciate." That was a very solid applause line, I have to say. Continuing, Sensational Sherry and Peggy Sue, another example of your conundrum, Trevor. Wilma Flintstone and Betty Rubble, which, they're cartoons, so it'd be interesting to see how that works. Laverne and Shirley.
R.I.P.
Yes. Marcia and Carol Brady. R.I.P. Right? Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm not sure. I was never a big Brady Bunch person. I never even got. I mean, it was obviously before my time, but I never got into it, even from like a rerun, like kitsch kind of point of view.
Yeah.
I do remember the first Brady Bunch movie was good.
Yeah, it was like a parody. Florence Henderson, who plays Carol Brady, is in fact deceased, so R.I.P. The Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young. R.I.P. Is it problematic for me to say R.I.P. to that? I don't know.
Snickers is going to remove their sponsorship of the show.
Yes.
You said that.
Fashion Queen Barbie and Skiing Vacation Barbie, which, of having seen those Barbie dolls, I don't know what you'd be doing there. And you get what I'm saying. And and it ends on a very corny but timely one. It says, "To end version 1 of this list by taking it to the edge." And then I think he says El Dandy and Lita. Is that what he says?
Yes.
Which is I don't get it.
No, I had to look this up. So if you Google El Dandy and Lita, there are some. I almost don't know if I should talk about this. There are some. I didn't.
So don't. You know what? Don't.
Okay, I'll just say there are salacious rumors that may or may not be true if you were to look that up. But apparently, this was a thing that certainly Colt Cabana was aware of, that some fans were aware of, that I was not aware of.
Yeah, and of course this was timely because this was when the whole Matt Hardy, Lita, Edge love triangle thing was going down, and it was the talk of the wrestling world. So at the time, I guess this was edgy, pun intended, but now it just seems kind of not as funny as the rest of it. But yeah, good list. B. Arthur, Estelle Getty.
You did leave out. You missed between the Bradys and Moolah and Mae Young, Anne Heche and Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh, yeah, and I wrote that down. I just missed it. Yeah, Anne Heche and Ellen DeGeneres. And I thought to myself, what about Portia? But I guess they weren't together yet? I don't know.
No, yeah, Anne Heche was pre-Portia, obviously. That was Ellen's rebound. But yeah, what a yeah, this was probably one of the funnier bits of Colt Cabana comedy we've seen so far, I would say. There were some genuine, like, really good little ones in that list. Even on the surface, you would say, "Oh, this is a hack thing," but I think he went so far with it, and there were some funny, real, and also I think Punk and Creo's reactions.
Yeah, the reactions.
Were pretty good.
Punk in particular was really on for his reactions. Even Jack Evans, was pretty funny during it at certain points. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing that was funny about Carino's list was that they were so excessive. They just went on for so long, and I think Cabana definitely got the spirit of that down. I actually don't think they were quite as long as some of Carino's lists, but still very long, as you could just tell. And probably the most well-remembered part of the entire show.
One thing that I think was interesting, did you notice that when Regal did the intro for Carino, normally whoever Carino's personal ring announcer, they'll say, and the fucking god of wrestling. For some reason on this show, he said the effing god. Like, he didn't say the fuck. So I wonder if someone told him don't swear, or he just switched it up because he kind of self-edited himself. I was just like, that's the first time I've ever seen say effing god, not fucking god.
Was Bobby Heenan there or something?
Also funny before the match was CM Punk grabbed Jack Evans' hat that he was wearing sideways, and he wears it sideways to mock him. And then on commentary, it's funny, like Gabe, bless his heart, is like trying to sell that Punk is just consumed with rage on this night with Jimmy Rave. And this match, Punk's being kind of lighthearted and enjoying joking around and stuff. So Gabe on commentary has to say something like, Punk's almost manic. He was angry before and now he's joking around. He's kind of selling. Like Punk is kind of crazy with rage. That's why he's laughing. Like,
hey, he tried. He tried.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's the kind of thing I really liked about Gabe was like he would try and go the extra mile at some points to like make sure things tied together. Where most other bookers or announcers would just go, whatever, it doesn't make sense. I'm just going to ignore it. He was like trying his best to try and like justify it. Like this is why Punk is laughing when the last match he was like telling a guy he was going to murder them for real. So, yeah, the story of this match isn't really the match itself. It's a few minutes into this match. It's Roderick Strong and Colt Cabana are wrestling. Colt's against the ropes. Roderick's running at him to do a spot. Also, you just hear this loud snap. The top rope sags a bit, and you can see Roderick Strong, he just stops in the middle of running towards Colt, and he's kind of like a deer in the headlights, like, what the fuck happened? And Colt, to his credit, like, sees that Roderick's kind of just stopped, and he just immediately, like, hits him or slaps him or chops him or something to, like, be like, no, we got to keep wrestling. And so what happened was, in the middle of this match, I'll go to the PW Insider quote from this. Mike Johnson wrote, "The ring actually broke several minutes into the bout as metal bracketing that held the supports in place where they were welded together." No, let me just make sure. I think the phrasing on that. The ring actually broke several minutes into the bout as metal bracketing that held the supports in place split where they were welded together. So it was a manufacturing defect. There were some slight changes to the match because of the busted ring, which was obvious crowd when the ring post on one side popped out of place and was sliding inward. Other than cutting a few minutes off the match, everything that had been planned was done. So, yeah, I would say this match was not a bad match. It wasn't particularly great, but it was not bad. But I thought the thing that was kind of surprising was they wrestled, like, I'm surprised to even read that Mike Johnson say that, like, they cut a few minutes off this match because they wrestled for quite a while after the ring breaks. And you can even some guys do top rope moves. They run the ropes at some points, although you can tell guys are being kind of gingerly. And I think the thing that kind of hurts this match is that the commentary at the point that the ring breaks, even though the wrestlers I felt like did a pretty good job of just working around it, the commentary becomes obsessed with it, particularly Gabe. Like he's talking about how dangerous it is, and someone in the back should stop the match and take this out of their hands.
It almost made me wonder if Gabe just like felt guilty about letting these guys wrestle in this ring, because he was like saying stuff like, "Oh, well, if you knew this, you'd probably stop the match," being that you're the one that could.
At one point, he says something like someone in the higher up should just like stop the match and take this out of their hands. And I was like, it's crazy to hear that when you know Gabe would be that person. And in fact, if you watch this match, as soon as the ring breaks, within pretty much immediately for the rest of the match, Gabe and members of the ring crew, in fact, I think it might be Dunn and Marcos with hoodies because there's a Dunn and Marcos chant, are running constantly like from behind the scenes back to the ring, behind the scenes, like trying to figure out like what the hell's happened to the ring. And for me, it was really hard to focus on the match because the commentary from that point on, it became not about the match. It became just about, how dangerous this is. And I kind of felt like it was Gabe trying to put the match over by saying, look how dangerous it is. Look how brave these guys are for wrestling for this. I feel like it kind of has a different feeling nowadays where like, I feel like in 2021, no commentator would try and put over like that the wrestlers were in mortal danger because the ring broke. Like that would open you up to liability, especially considering that in not too long ago in Evolve, another Gabe booked promotion, a wrestler famously, Peter Casa, the rope broke as he was doing a flying move, and that basically ended his career. Like he hurt himself. He hurt some vertebrae in his neck from doing a move and just decided to call it quits there. So I feel like this is another one of those things where, yes, Gabe could do commentary for this match and hype up how dangerous it was because it's post-produced, so he knows no one got hurt from it. But still, I still feel like today, no announcer would be like really sell how dangerous this broken ring that we let guys wrestle in is, but it happened here. Again, I thought the match hard for me to focus. I thought it was solid, slightly above average. I thought they did a decent amount of time beating up Jack Evans, and Jack Evans always takes a good beating. I felt it was kind of bad in the sense that we had just seen a couple shows earlier one of the greatest Jack Evans gets beat up matches of all time. So I felt bad watching this because the whole time I was like, this is good, but it's not as good as that. But that's an unfair comparison. I felt like Jack Evans also, he threw a bit too many strikes in this match, which again is his one weakness. His strikes hardly ever look good, and I always feel like he's at his best when he finds ways to ignore that. I thought you saw in some sequences, like an early sequence grappling with Roderick Strong, you could really start to see Colt's British influence he picked up from his tour over there coming out more and more in a match like this. And I guess my one last thing I'll say is I complain on other matches with Jack Evans and Roderick Strong where their big flaw is they would do the Ode to the Bulldogs, which is the coolest move they have, always gets the biggest reaction in any one of their matches, and they would just do it like in the middle of the match and not finish. Well, I got to give credit where credit is due. They actually do it for the finish. I think this is one of the first times they do it for the finish, which is the right move because it's always like a huge crowd pleaser, and I don't think you can top it. So overall, I thought decent match, not great, especially considering the talent, but it's kind of hard to fault them when the ring breaks minutes and the commentary then becomes lightning focused on it.
Yeah, I couldn't. The thing is, like, because you mentioned like how it kind of like just the commentary is too focused on it and the wrestlers really aren't. It kind of makes me say, like, was it as dangerous as Gabe was saying? Because if it was, it made a lot of the stuff they were doing just feel stupid. Like the fact that they were like still like hitting the ropes. You'd think if the ring was broken and the ropes were broken, they would try to like not do as much on the ropes, but they were like, so, and they were like doing springboards and all the usual stuff. And it's like, so was that really, really incredibly dangerous to them, or was Gabe overselling what was going on with the ring? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, we'll get to this in a couple of minutes, but there is one thing where they had Rock and Rebel do a match like that did not air afterwards to test out the ring afterwards. And even after they fixed it, apparently Rebel told the wrestlers try to avoid the corner where the ring broke. So, but again, for the rest of the night, like I don't really notice like the ring being a hindrance or the guys working that much differently. But apparently he did say after working that match, like you should try and stay out of that corner, which I think guys generally did.
Right, but the rest of the ring was not out of bounds at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of springboard stuff. Like one notable spot was Carino hitting 5 power bombs on Jack Evans in a row. But there's not too much to say about it. They put in a very admirable effort. I thought that Evans getting the pin showed that Gabe was impressed with how well he did in the Midwest. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading too much into that.
And no, especially the commentary tries to tell us like this is the biggest win of his career. Like they really try and focus on the fact Jack Evans just pinned CM Punk.
Right. So that's why I think like Gabe, Evans really impressed Gabe the same way he impressed us. Yeah. I don't know. Like I guess I can't really fault the guys much for the match because it was distracting to think about the ring, and it was tainted by that. But still, the match was just okay. It was a solid match, but these guys could have a really good match, and they didn't.
And again, this kind of goes into the thing with this tournament, which is, like I said at the start, Gabe put all his eggs in this basket. So the problem is when you have a 6-man match like this that doesn't hit, like that's a lot of really good talent that kind of had one chance and didn't really do something great with it, as opposed to if you had split these guys up into 3 singles matches, you'd almost certainly get at least one really good match out of that, I would have to say. But, that's the thing with 6-man tags is it's a lot of talent, but you're risking things in a weird way. But after the match, Like we said, Gabe sells us as Jack Evans' biggest win. Generation Next goes to the back as Carino and Punk get into an argument. Colt tries to get between them, but they get into a shouting match as well, Colt and Carino. Carino tells Colt to stop walking behind Punk, which I thought was kind of like an interesting, I guess that was a reference to the classic Dusty Rhodes promo he did on Arn Anderson to Dustin, in the mid-90s, where he's like, Arn Anderson's a walk behind her, and the view never changes, that legendary promo. So Punk then at this point screams, "Fuck you" to Carino. Carino replies by calling Punk Triple H, which gets a Triple H chant. And I love at this point in wrestling, calling someone Triple H was like the key to getting like easy, cheap heat from fans at any indie show. Punk says, "Go back to 0-1, you errand boy." Colt tells Carino and Punk to shake hands. Colt shakes Carino's hand. The crowd chants for Punk and Carino to shake. Punk sticks out his hand, and Carino teases that he's going to shake it, but bails to the outside instead. Colt holds a pissed-off CM Punk back and says, "Who needs that son of a bitch?" So continuing to try and sell this angle they've been teasing for a while now, which is the kind of simmering dislike between Punk and Carino, even though they're supposed to kind of be friends, which we'll see as we'll talk about on the next show. It does not go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another thing. Like, it just doesn't go anywhere. And the one commentary, Punk was even like later when he was asked about it, like, "Oh yeah, like it was nothing. Like, we're fine." And it's just like, I guess maybe by the time he recorded the commentary, they knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. Do you think that was the case?
Yeah, because for those who don't know, the story of the next show, Back to Basics, which we'll be covering next, is the main event was supposed to be Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal versus Steve Carino and CM Punk for the number one contendership to the tag titles. And I guess Carino no-shows, and it ended up leading to one of those, what seems like a million like moments where Gabe and Carino were on the outs for a little while. I mean, Carino would eventually come back. So that basically, him not showing up for whatever reason, I haven't learned it yet, I think led to the end of this angle that they were clearly building for a bunch of shows.
Yeah. It's like on its own, that's not that crazy, but there's just the fact that there's so many of examples of that in this period, I just find very interesting. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that they lost much from them not doing that, because what Punk ended up doing in ROH in 2005 was some of the best stuff ever. So, fine, ended up all's well that ends well, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Actually, one interesting thing about that, I'll just say quickly, is Jimmy Rave mentioned this when I was listening to, I think, his interview on the Honorable Mention podcast, where he was like, one thing he really liked about Gabe. This might have been his RF Shoot interview either. I don't know. I've listened to so much stuff, it get all kids mixed together. But Jimmy Rave said one thing he really learned from Gabe that he liked was Gabe would sometimes book a guy in two different feuds at the same time, so they always had something to do, even if one feud wasn't going on a particular show. And, even if this feud with Carino had gone off, like Punk was already in a feud with Jimmy Rave. Like, he had two feuds, basically.
Right.
So that would have been interesting to see, like, would we have gotten as much Rave Punk stuff as we got, or would have been like more alternating, like, a Carino match on one show, Rave match on another. Like, that's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were going to say something else. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that was it.
Okay, so PW Insider Mike Johnson wrote about they took an impromptu intermission at this point. Mike Johnson writes, the promotion took an unscheduled intermission at this point, with the ring crew fixing the ring in 29 minutes. I love that Mike had the exact thing, not half an hour, 29 minutes. Given the damage of the ring, that was nothing short of a miracle. They actually used a car jack to keep the bracketing in place and pulled the ring post upright with several braces. In the event of further problems with the ring, Ring of Honor actually dispatched several of their students to go back to the Ring of Honor school and break down the training ring so it could be transported to the venue in case they needed to replace the broken ring with a new one. Thankfully, that never needed to be the case. And then PW Insider also wrote, although he is out of the promotion's storylines for the next 90 days, H.C. Loke was backstage handling his normal agent duties and helped get the ring back up to snuff after it broke. So I love, they're selling this angle, but, fixing the ring. H.C. Loke had to come out and have to, and, depending if that thing was right about him maybe being the weapon of mass destruction number 3, it was maybe a surprisingly busy night for Loke, I guess.
Yeah. But hey, they rose to the occasion.
Yeah. We go backstage where Gary Michael Capetta, in a green sweater almost matching the weird green tent the wall had with the shooting of this, the white balance I think was off for this significantly.
No, you don't say.
He is joined by Jay Lethal. Gary informs us that the ring, in fact, is broken, and it's going to take some time to fix it. Lethal has a black eye, and he says he was kicked by someone who attacked him, but he didn't see who. Lethal says he is not going to back out of his match tonight, though. Tonight is his night. He doesn't quite say it quite with the gusto of tonight is the night I've been waiting for, but it's still a little bit corny.
Yeah, I wrote the same thing. Not as good.
Elsewhere backstage, we go to Sugar Sean Price, whose own sweater looks to be matching the tint of the green wall. Again, the white balance completely off. He's joined by Spanky and James Gibson. Price asks, how do they feel about losing in front of this big crowd in Philly, which seems like kind of an insulting question. Gibson doesn't like that question. He's not happy. He says he's here to be a champion. He's here for, quote, Austin Arias is how he pronounces his name. BJ Whitmer and Dan Moff. Gibson points out that in singles, he's undefeated in Ring of Honor, which is not that big of a brag, James, considering that you've only wrestled, like 2 or 3 singles matches so far? But anyway, he says if they're going to work as a tag team, he and Spanky has to be able to defend. He has to be able to depend on Spanky. Gibson says Spanky dropped the ball tonight. Spanky defends himself by saying that while he likes to have fun, he takes it serious in the ring. He gives it 110%, and he works out and trains when he isn't wrestling. Spanky says he knows Gibson beat him when they wrestled each other, but if they wrestled 10 times, Gibson wouldn't beat him 10 times. Spanky says he's not saying that he's better than Gibson, but he tells Gibson, don't think you're better than me either. Gibson says, whoa, calm down. You're taking it all wrong, Spanky. I'm not trying to challenge you to a match. I just want you to take things a little more seriously. Gibson leaves. Price asks Spanky what the Trent Acid thing was about. Spanky calls Acid a disrespectful little prick as well as a kid, and he says he doesn't even want to talk about him. Matt, I looked it up. Spanky was born in 1979. Trent Acid was born in 1980. So, again, one of those fun things. I always love when a wrestler that is barely older than somebody else calls somebody a kid.
I also don't think that Spanky had even much more experience than Trent Acid, like in terms of...
No, I don't think so.
I mean, in terms of years. Maybe like Spanky had more matches because of like WWE and stuff. But the whole Gibson Spanky dynamic, I don't think it works for me. I think they both seem annoying. Spanky is Spanky was fun because he was wacky, and he's not wacky at all in these. And they're very serious. And Jamie's just complaining. He's like, get serious, man. This is important to me. And it's I don't know, doesn't make these guys seem likable to me. But clearly the crowds didn't agree, so I shouldn't complain too much.
They're both taking things too seriously in different ways, and both in ways that, like you said, do not make them look great. Like, Gibson's being kind of an asshole to Spanky, and Spanky's kind of acting like he's like a gruff 45-year-old when he's talking about kids. And even that match against Jimmy Jacobs with the angle there before the match, Spanky seemed like a little too mad that Jimmy Jacobs was doing a similar finisher. But... yeah, it doesn't quite work for me either. So this was at the point, it does not make the DVD, where we had the Rockin' Rebel and Greg Matthews defeat Blue Blood and Drew Moore in 427. This was your usual match at this point where Ring of Honor did not have a Pennsylvania promoter's license.
I wonder if Drew Moore is like a wrestling pun. Like, I drew more than that guy.
He should have his partner Drew less. Yeah, this was
then their manager drew the same.
They had Rockin' Rebel had the promoter's license, so any show in Philadelphia around this time, Ring of Honor would give Rockin' Rebel a dark match that they did not air, because I guess that was part of Rebel's demands for letting them use the promoter's license. Mike Johnson wrote, the Rockin' Rebel and Greg Matthews beat Blue Blood and Drew Moore in a match that was originally scheduled for the after the tournament semifinals, but was sent out first after intermission, partially to test out the ring. After working the belt, Rebel advised that the workers try to stay out of the bad corner as much as possible. So it is kind of fun, Rebel, you go out there, see if this ring's going to hold up. If you die, it won't be as big a loss. I mean, granted, if I was promoted, that'd be the same thing I would do, but it is kind of funny to think yeah, we're moving this match up just in case. You guys go out first.
It is actually extremely, extremely strange.
Next up, a trios tournament, the other semifinal match. The Rottweilers of Homicide, Ricky Reyes, and Rocky Romero defeated Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, and Vordell Walker in 9 minutes, 54 seconds when Reyes pinned Walker after they hit their demolition decapitation style knee drop. I saw some recap refer to this as the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I don't know if it was the official name of the move or not, but Ring of Honor wasn't calling it that, but it'd be interesting if that was it. Matt, this is the other semifinal. Again, a lot of talent in this match. How do you think it actually came on execution? Didn't quite even go 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was. That was surprising. I don't know. Like, do you think that they seem more tentative because of the ring? Obviously, everything that you wrote says no, but I don't know. I kept thinking during the match that they were kind of, which is fine. Like if that's true, I'm not sure if it was. Like maybe I was seeing things.
I'm not sure, but I was going to ask you. Do you think do you think this match would have been longer than 9:54 if the ring hadn't broke? Because on one hand, one of the two teams did have to wrestle a longer match, not that far in the future. But at the same time, for these 6 guys to only get 10 minutes seems a little weird. I mean, I don't know.
Well, they said that they had an impromptu intermission, leading me to believe that the intermission was supposed to be after this match.
Yeah.
Which would indicate to me that maybe they would have done a bigger, more dramatic match, that ends the half.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that makes sense.
But, who knows? They do a lot of, stalling, and then they get more into it. And for a while, they're not really taking a lot of bumps. It feels like they take them some time to get comfortable taking bumps in the ring. Eventually, after Danielson does some no-selling of Homicide strikes and hits a bunch of European uppercuts, then they start bumping for each other's strikes, and Romero comes off the top rope with a drop kick, and Danielson hits a drop kick on Homicide and a German suplex on Reyes, and then they start wrestling a little bit more normally. Joe hits the big power slam on Homicide. Walker puts Reyes in like a power slam position and spins him into a Uranagi, which I thought was a pretty cool move, honestly. Like I didn't mind Walker here. Like I thought that was, he had a couple of interesting moves. Danielson and Homicide, of course, fight on the floor, whipping into the guardrails. Smokes attacks him from behind to save Homicide. And in the midst of all of this, Joe does his tope onto Homicide at the last second. Smokes gets in the way to take the bump too. And then Reyes and Romero do their little knee drop thing. And Danielson and Homicide continue to fight in the crowd and out into the lobby, because why wouldn't they? So not bad. I thought they seemed more tentative, so it didn't seem like a very eventful match. I would say this match, like if I saw this match on paper at this time, I would have thought it would have been more than what it was, and it wasn't. So yeah, I don't even know if I'd give this match, that 3 stars. Maybe like 2.5, 2 3/4.
I might have liked it slightly more than you, but I wouldn't be far different. I don't know if, again, we don't know for sure why they wrestled the match the way they do, but all we can judge it on is what we saw. And watching this match, it almost came off almost like a longer version of the Embassy Second City Saints match, where it was almost more about furthering a feud than having a great match, because I would say I timed it out. I think that the first 7 or 8 minutes of this 10-minute match, it's Bryan Danielson in for his team. It's not till the final couple minutes where you get to see Vordell Walker and Joe, and a lot of that is Danielson getting worked 3-on-1. And the story, and it was a good story for furthering the feud, where the story of this match is every time Danielson makes a comeback, instead of going to tag out, he attacks Homicide on the apron, and so immediately the Rottweilers jump on him and they get the control again. So the idea is, Danielson's so blinded by his rage from Homicide that he keeps not making the smart move until eventually he finally does. And then actually works well in the finish too, where the finish of the match is Danielson's brawling with Homicide into the crowd, and Joe even gets distracted by Julius Smokes, and that leaves poor Vordell Walker alone in the ring 2-on-1 with the Havana Pitbulls, and they take him out. So in that sense, from a booking standpoint, I even like the idea Joe's interactions with Homicide in this match are not many, but Joe does wrestle with a bit of extra intensity against Homicide, which I always love when a feud ends and then the two guys encounter each other again and they kind of remind you that, like, we're not feuding right now, but we still really don't like each other. Like, Joe kind of wrestles like he still hates Homicide, which he should. That plays into the character at this point. But yeah, so even though all of that makes sense for the feud, though, I think the thing is, what that means is the match was like 7 or 8 out of the 10 minutes of this match was Bryan Danielson getting beaten down by the Pitbulls and Homicide. And it wasn't terrible. It just wasn't that great either. And I would actually say I like the Pitbulls a little more than I often do, but Rocky Romero's charisma continues to come out more and more every show. I thought Vordell Walker, in the very limited amount he had, I thought he looked good. I thought he had more fire in this match than his other couple matches we've seen him in. It's kind of a shame that he ends up losing this match and barely getting any ring time because, he even felt like in that interview that he was clicking better in this match. The one interesting moment CM Punk on commentary at this point says, and I'll quote, Homicide is like an evil thug Santa Claus with his 2 little elves running around ringside.
Oh, God.
I don't know what an evil thug Santa Claus is. I don't know why that popped into his head. At this point, it wasn't the holidays anymore.
I think he was clearly just trying to call the Pitbulls short.
Yeah. I also thought it was funny. People kept tugging on Danielson's beard during this match, and earlier in Danielson's entrance for the first match, he was like twirling his mustache. So if you were a fan of people tugging on Bryan Danielson's facial hair, if that's a fetish, Trios Tournament 2005 is the best Ring of Honor show to watch.
This is the best show for that particular fetish. Yes, I'll reiterate.
Exactly. So, yeah, slightly disappointing match. Well, not slightly, fairly disappointing match. Not bad, but not particularly good. And again, we were getting to the point in the card, I felt like, where even though the first round match with Joe's team was really good, we were kind of getting to the point where it's like, we need another great match even a great match on the show.
Or just like a genuinely good one.
Yeah, and time was running out, yes, because that brings us to anyway, immediately after the match, Danielson and Homicide continue to brawl. Joe comforts Vordell Walker, and then we go to the next match, the 6-man Mayhem match. Azrael defeated B-Boy, Deranged, Dixie, Izzy, and Kevin Steen in 11 minutes, 8 seconds when he pinned B-Boy after he hit a top rope double stomp. So, this was Kevin Steen's main card Ring of Honor debut. And, Matt, I did a bunch of research for this, and Kevin Steen's going to be the bane of my existence for this podcast because Kevin Steen has done more goddamn shoot interviews than pretty much any wrestler of this era.
And you just can't help yourself but to watch them all. I know.
I didn't get through them all, but I tried to cram yesterday. He did one for Smart Mark Video. He did one for RF Video. He did one for High Spots. Those 3 alone are nearly 11 hours, I think, around between those. Just the Smart Mark Video one is nearly a 5-hour shoot interview. He did a whole series of shows where it was like the Kevin Steen talk show for High Spots, including one with Gabe. I never got to that. But, he's done lots of podcast interviews, all sorts of stuff. But I do have some background on this right now. So there are more stories to tell that I'm saving for other shows. Well, basically just one other story. There's a thing he got into with CM Punk that he talks about on a future show. But so the whole story, we kind of mentioned it on a recent show about Steen and Generico getting into Ring of Honor. Steen talked about on his shoot interviews that what happened was he and Generico actually bought tickets to Weekend of Thunder Night 1. And after the show, or at some point, he goes up to Punk and he's like, I have a tape. Me and Generico have a tape. Who do we give this to? Because we want to work for Ring of Honor. And Punk says, oh, it's Gabe. Give it to him. And Steen says at that point, he didn't even know who Gabe was, but they handed Gabe the tape. They don't hear from him for 2 months. 2 months later, Gabe calls him and is like, I watched your tape. I want to book you, Steen, for to be the weapon of mass destruction number 2 at Final Battle. And then in February, I'll start booking you guys as yourselves. Steen gets hurt. And he's freaking out, he says, because he thinks he's just ruined a huge opportunity. He goes, I didn't realize this first run wasn't a good opportunity. Generico takes his spot as the weapon of mass destruction. Both guys do work Do or Die in February, where Steve actually wrestles B-Boy, and Generico, I think, does some kind of 4-way. And then, Matt, I never knew this before I did this research, or if I did, I forgot about it. Gabe said his plan, told Steen, he says, this isn't written in stone, but he says, my plans for your booking on the Trios tournament is I'm going to have you either team with Bryan Danielson and Samoa Joe, or with James Gibson and Spanky. And then later he told him, no, I've changed that. You're in a 6-man mayhem. But the original plans, according to Steen, was he was going to be in that 6-man tag, which
instead of Ordell Walker
or Nigel McGuinness. He was going to be one or the other. He was going to be in one of those spots on one of the teams. And for whatever reason, Gabe changed his mind and put him in this. Steen also said that he asked Gabe before this, like, do you want me to wrestle as a face or do you want me to wrestle as a heel? And Gabe says it doesn't matter, just wrestle. And the interesting thing Steen has said in multiple shoots is, like, he says, like, I didn't know at that moment, but what I learned is that doesn't work for me, just wrestle. Like, I have to wrestle as a face or a heel, because he says, even though my nickname is Mr. Wrestling, like, I don't think people come just to see me wrestle. Like, the character's an important part for me. And he says, and we'll get into this in other episodes, that he didn't think he necessarily got the greatest opportunity in this first run. He and Generico didn't, but also that he thinks that not having, like, a character direction hurt him on these things. But
I think he's right. But
yeah. So yeah, this match was what'd you think about the match, man? I mean, there's not much to this match, really. I mean, it's your standard scramble, I would say. But what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to enjoy these matches, when they're not particularly bad. And I thought this wasn't, and I thought it was pretty fun. I thought people looked pretty good. I actually thought B-Boy looked quite good, and I'm actually surprised that B-Boy wasn't booked more by ROH. I know he does come back for other shows, but he's not that much. I thought Steen looked pretty good. I really, I had a good time watching it. I definitely don't think that these guys were tentative because of the ring. I will say that. There was one funny part on commentary where Punk says Spanky and Gibson were really looking forward to the match, and Gabe's like, "No, they weren't. I don't believe you." And it must be an inside joke. Maybe like Spanky and Gibson like complained about these kinds of matches. That's the only thing I could think of. Did it read that way to you also?
Yeah, and in fact, did you notice that also Punk at one point, like, he kind of is focusing on Steen. Like, he says, Steen's ugly. He calls one of his moves the Mr. Peepers driver. I believe that was the stuffed pile driver. And then later, when Steen does another move, he says that's really unsafe. Like, and he kind of focuses on that. Let me just see if I can find the quote. He calls it the unsafe overhead suplex. And in fact, in one of the shoot interviews that I saw from Kevin Steen, he has, we'll get into it on another episode, but he has a confrontation with CM Punk, and he's like, I don't have feet with CM Punk, and people thought he did, and he actually references the commentary on this match, because he says people thought Punk hated me because Punk was saying, like, aren't you mad Punk is commentating your matches and he's calling you unsafe? And Steen says, that didn't bug me. He says, if anything, that helps me. That makes me look more dangerous. But I did kind of feel like watching this match that, like, you don't call a wrestler's work unsafe, because technically in the world of wrestling, aren't a lot of your moves supposed to be unsafe?
Like, I mean, all of them.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, that kind of felt like it was kind of crossing a line, And I mean, there are people that have said that Punk did not like certain people, and Punk could be grumpy or Punk could go after somebody. And I don't know. I don't know if you got that impression, but it did kind of feel like me that Punk was kind of shitting on Steen a little bit in this match.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, and as far as like other stuff in the match, like one spot that I enjoyed was Izzy went up to the top. Azrael went up to the top for a dive, but Izzy stopped him and hit a moonsault drop kick on Azrael. So Azrael got knocked down and he fell onto Deranged and Dixie, while Izzy, completed his moonsault in the other direction onto B-Boy and Steen. And that's not a spot I've ever seen before, and I thought that was really cool. And I actually thought that Izzy looked very good, and I think he always looks good in these kinds of matches. I think, like, he's one of, like, the unsung heroes of, like, these 6-man mayhem or scramble style matches, because you just don't hear much about Izzy. But yeah, Steen gets a chance to do a standing flipping leg drop. Deranged teases going for a neck breaker, but instead he hits a low blow and gloats about it. I miss Deranged when he wasn't around as much. He's a lot of fun. At one point early in the match, Izzy and Deranged, like when they first everybody drops off the apron, so Izzy and Deranged have to fight each other, but instead they just like pretend to like to box each other. Like they just punch the air and the other guy sells it, which, good character work. Steen didn't have a character, but Izzy and Deranged, and especially Deranged, definitely did. Actually, let's be honest, Deranged was the only guy in the whole match that had a character. But he had one. And yes, not only does Steen get called a Mr. Peepers driver, it's called a swinging Mr. Peepers driver.
Ooh, the variation.
Yeah. At one point, Azrael hits a big clothesline on Deranged, and Dixie breaks up the pin, so they're pissed off at each other. B-Boy hits a double backdrop suplex on Izzy and Deranged at the same time, and the crowd goes nuts for B-Boy. Then Azrael hits his top rope blockbuster / diamond dust thing on B-Boy. Everyone's down. Dixie clotheslines Izzy through the ropes. Deranged goes for a Rana on Steen, but Steen catches him in a cradle over the head toss. And that's the one that Punk calls the unsafe overhead suplex. And he asks Gabe for a dangerous chant, or a call, a dangerous, whatever, the dangerous. And, good that I'm not the only one that notices that Gabe does that at extremely random times. It's very unpredictable when he's going to say dangerous. And at one point, B-Boy hits a inverted DDT on the apron on Steen, and the crowd's really rooting for B-Boy. Azrael hits B-Boy with a double stomp off the top to the head to get the win. And Gabe says, maybe now Azrael and Dixie will start using music, because I guess they broke their losing streak. But had they ever established that was like a thing, that they weren't using music until they won?
They did. It was during the last days of Special K, and then they won. Izzy won, and then Izzy started using music again, I think, and then they didn't. Azrael and Dixie didn't. So it just got weird. It's really dumb.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're going to start using music now. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a sucker for these kinds of matches, and I didn't think this one was much lower than the typical, so I enjoyed it. And I liked seeing Steen, and I thought B-Boy and Izzy both looked very good.
I thought this was a decent scramble style match. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was better than than the average scramble, but it wasn't worse either. It was a decent one of these I agree. I think B-Boy was the star of the match, which is kind of weird because even though B-Boy did do some cool moves, like the one you mentioned, he did a big basement drop kick, the double suplex, a pile driver variation, like a cross-armed pile driver. But at the same time, these matches are usually all about the high flying, and B-Boy's offense is the most grounded. But he just wrestled with kind of this spring in his step and this urgency, and the crowd's chanting his name before the end of the match. He really did a good job. And I don't know if it was just travel or whatever, but I'm kind of surprised he didn't get more bookings from this because he did was the star of this match. I think Steen did basically all you can do in a match like this when you're a brand new guy, which is just hit the 5 coolest moves you know how to do. And Steen basically did that with the flipping leg drop and the package. He does the package pile driver, which is his finisher, just in the middle of the match because it's just you don't got that much time in this match, and all you can do is spots in this kind of match. So here we go. So I don't blame him for that. And yeah, Izzy, like you said, always looks good in these kinds of matches, and decent enough, entertaining kind of match. And I guess in a way, this is kind of a good palate cleanser between rounds of a tournament. So, yeah, the next match is the semi-main event. It is the Ring of Honor Pure Title match. Jay Lethal defeats John Walters in 11 minutes, 29 seconds. He becomes the 4th ever Pure Champion. Before the match, the ref informs us that the Pure Title rules, and it also says that Nana and Jimmy Rave are banned from ringside. Nana then says he talked to his lawyer, and he says that his lawyer told him that he and Jimmy can stay at ringside. At this point, CM Punk comes out, hobbling on one leg. He chases Nana to the back. He then returns and chases Rave into the crowd. So I like that he chased them one at a time. He throws a chair at him, and as he throws a chair at him, Gabe says, and I quote, "Punk risking the safety of the fans," which again is another line I don't think you would say nowadays.
Yeah, I didn't get that one at all.
In fact, I think because later on in the future there will be a fan incident where a fan gets hit with a chair and they have to send out Jack Evans to calm the fan down. So fans' safety do get risked at Ring of Honor shows.
Indie wrestling, everybody.
So a little background too. Before the match, groups of fans and crowd, according to the Pro Wrestling Torch, and you can hear it, chanted "Masterpiece" at incumbent pure title holder John Walters, who lost to Chris Masterpiece Masters in a squash match the week before on Raw. Walters responded to one group, yelling something to the effect of, "You try living on $250 per show." Other than that, the Raw squash match wasn't addressed. Walters walked to the ring to new African music, sporting slightly baggy purple pants and an African shirt.
I don't think that Walters, who just joined the embassy and has all these riches, should be saying that he's making $250 a show.
Yeah. Although I guess we should talk about, for people that don't know, the story behind this match is this was John Walters' last match in Ring of Honor. I mean, he did do one match a year or two later for Honor Reclaims Boston, and he did actually recently in the last couple of months do a couple matches in Ring of Honor again. But this was his last match as a regular in Ring of Honor. And I'll go to the Observer, actually. They talked about this. Dave writes, the other match of note was Jay Lethal beating John Walters to win the pure title, which had to happen given that Walters was squashed in a minute by Chris Masters a few days earlier on Raw. Fans were all over Walters, chanting "Masterpiece" at him and worse. Walters yelled at the crowd about how he got paid $250 for less than 2 minutes of easy work. Well, that made sure the heckling never stopped. People were on him for submitting to a full Nelson on TV. So that's interesting. Dave's report interprets it as Walter said he got paid $250 to do the Master Lock thing. And the PW Torch thing says he was telling fans, I'm only get to pay $250 to work Ring of Honor. So I don't know which is the truth there. I thought the interesting line there, though, was Dave saying that, he had to lose the title because of losing to the Master Lock Challenge. I think we talked about this in the past. Dave takes what happened to indie guys in WWE way too seriously. I think he feels like the fans would never see them seriously, where I feel like, yes, the fans ribbed him for that, but the fans weren't going to lose respect for him as a serious performer. I don't think. I think fans, indie fans, especially Ring of Honor fans, could separate what they did in WWE from that, because we're not far away from Joe Kobashi, where Dave would initially say Joe can't wrestle Kobashi in a singles match because he'd have to lose, and that would ruin him in Ring of Honor. It's no, it wouldn't. This stuff isn't going to kill guys. And in fact, if we go to the PW Torch, well, actually, let me go to the PW Insider. They wrote, Lethal worked with one of his eyes completely shut from taking a bad headbutt in a match with Homicide the night before for the New Jersey AWA promotion. The match was okay, but nothing compared to their Elizabeth, New Jersey match a few weeks back. Samoa Joe came out to – that was the after the match thing. But anyway, this is a point I want to get to, Matt. Mike Johnson wrote, for those wondering, this was the plan for several weeks now. So Walter's WWE appearance did not lead to his losing the title. So Johnson saying, this was planned, nothing to do with that.
It seemed like they were building to it,
Yeah. So anyway, for the match, I got some other notes, but we'll get to the match itself right now. I thought this match was average. It was fine. I felt like this was a match where I noticed the crowd was kind of dead, apart from a couple times they got a little bit up for Jay Lethal. It was kind of a middle-of-the-road match. They did pop for the finish. It felt like they were more excited to see Lethal win the title and to see a title change than they were for the match. The match was it was decent action back and forth, but there was a couple rope breaks, but they didn't really wrestle to the pure rules. It just felt like a regular match that just had a couple rope breaks worked into it. There wasn't much of a story. Lethal, even his win with the dragon suplex at the end, it felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. After we watched their match recently in New Jersey in front of Lethal's hometown crowd, I mentioned, do you think he should have won the pure title on that night? And obviously hindsight is 2020. It's easy for me to say this, having watched both matches, but looking back, it's definitely I think it would have been way better for him to win in New Jersey on that night that he had to wrestle two matches in a row, because this match was not as good and had way less crowd reaction. I did like the one spot at the end where they played into their prior match where near the end Walters hits Lethal with the 3 consecutive lung blowers, which is what he used to beat Lethal in their last match, except in that match Lethal had used up all his rope breaks, so after he hit the lung blowers, he drags Lethal to the ropes and then holds onto the ropes while he pins him. In this match, Lethal hasn't used up all his rope breaks, so he can't do that, and Lethal kicks out. So I thought that was a nice little acknowledgement of the past in a way. But overall, I thought this was a very average, kind of forgettable match for a title change especially. But what do you think?
Yeah, I thought that the crowd heat, some of the execution, and the match story, I don't know what it was missing, but it was missing something. Maybe it was missing Nana also to get the crowd into it. Maybe he would have helped the crowd heat. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I read a live report from the Death Valley Driver guys, and they said that too. Like, they said, why would you get rid of Nana in a match like this, you know?
No, it doesn't make any sense. I will say one thing that I noticed in Nana's commentary at the beginning of the match when they told him he had to leave, and he said that he was talked to like his lawyer, and he said the lawyer's name, and it was something Goldstein, and I was like, if that's not a real person, that's anti-Semitic. But I'll let it slide. But other than that, I don't know. There's just not much to say about the match. It's pretty methodical. It's pretty quiet. I did like that, you know, like they tried to do their like Lethal reverses the lung blower, goes for a jackknife pin. Walters bridges out of it into a backslide. Then Walters went for the jackknife pin and Lethal bridged out of it, like little things like that. Like, but honestly, like stuff like that is the highlight of the match. There's just not that much. Lethal sort of got the crowd into it near the end because they would do a chop battle and Lethal would like scream and fire back up, and the crowd would sort of get into that. The botch where Lethal does like the backflip and Walters runs at him, and I'm not sure what was supposed to happen, but I guess maybe it was a leapfrog. I guess that was weird. But yeah, I do think Lethal's moves just didn't have that much pop to them, and I'm assuming that was because of his eye. So you know, got to maybe cut him some slack here. But after watching it, you do wish that they had just done the title change in the first match because it was just a lot better and the crowd was more into it.
Yeah, and so I tried to find out why did John Walters never come back to Ring of Honor, and I couldn't really get a complete answer. Again, maybe there's something I'm missing. I did find a couple things. The Pro Wrestling Torch wrote at the time, John Walters is gone from Ring of Honor for now. Sapolsky tells the Torch regarding Walters' departure, quote, "At this point, I don't see him returning, which is unfortunate because he is a great talent and a credit to the locker room." Ring of Honor played up Walters' departure as a storyline, stating that he quit the promotion. The Ring of Honor website states that his manager, Prince Nana, is, quote, "supportive of Walters' decision and named him as Secretary of Pugilistic Activity in Ghana, West Africa's government," unquote, which, that's a cute thing. So I did find, the most I could find on this, Matt, was I found an interview with John Walters that he did with Oliver Newman for WrestlingFigs.com. Oliver Newman asked John Walters, thoughts on joining the embassy? And Walters replied, "Prince Nana is probably the best manager on the indies, so joining him in the embassy was really neat." I love that he said neat, by the way. I felt becoming a villain was necessary, but may have been a little too late. The short time I had with the embassy was lots of fun, and I would certainly do it again. In fact, I did an indie show about a year ago where the embassy rejoined. I would say you probably haven't seen the end of the embassy. And then Oliver Newman asks, thoughts on the pure title loss to Jay Lethal? Walters replies, "Jay Lethal is a class act all the way, so I had no problem losing the title to him. I knew going in that would be my last match for a while because I was taking a break from wrestling. The break lasted about 5 months, and it was a nice, well-needed break. I was building a house, and my body was aching, so I decided to step away for a bit. The match with Lethal probably wasn't one of our better ones." So, first off, I think Walters is pretty much right about everything there, about both the quality of the match and also that the embassy was probably like too late, because I feel like I do think we saw little glimmers in his couple embassy matches of like this could have worked for him, because I do think there was some fun with him, like the ridiculous garb and just being, you know, the serious guy in a group that could be kind of goofy. And I agree with the idea of the too little too late. I agree with that too. One thing I did think is kind of interesting, Matt, is going back to Gabe's quote was, like, unfortunately, Walters left, and, like like Gabe acted like it wasn't, he didn't want Walters to leave. And then Walters says, I left because my body was hurt and I was building a house. And in fact, you look at Cage Match, Walters doesn't wrestle for months. But the thing is, he does come back and wrestle basically regularly on the indies after 5 months, and Ring of Honor does not start booking him again. So
yeah, he just has one special guest appearance in 2006, and then he wasn't back until ROH until now.
So I don't know if it's just, in a way, he has a lot of similarities with Xavier, because Xavier was another guy where he left with an injury, and then the newsletters were saying, Xavier was backstage on this Ring of Honor show, he's going to come back soon, and then he keeps wrestling, but he just never comes back to Ring of Honor. And Walter seems like kind of the same thing, where I guess and I have no inside information on this, but my guess would be, in both cases, the guys got injured, and then neither guy's career was going that great in Ring of Honor, and maybe by the time they were ready to come back, Gabe just felt like, you know what, we kind of don't need you right now.
Well, yeah, of course, they moved on, and they had guys like by 5 months after this, they had a lot of like new stars that were over and going in new directions, and yeah, they didn't really have a spot for John Walters. Sorry to say.
It's just interesting to me, though, because it's like he goes from being champion to his last title defense is his last match, and then he's done, which is, usually a lot of times when we see guys leave Ring of Honor, they either get like a big farewell or their careers kind of peter out, like Matt Striker. I hate to pick on Matt Striker, but, he kind of doesn't just, he gets booked less, and then eventually he just kind of disappears. But Walters is kind of like he's in the middle of his push, and then it's just, oh, he's gone. And never comes back, comes back once or twice. But his run was John Walters was not a bad wrestler. He needed personality, and the Embassy could have given him that, which again goes back to the too little too late thing. He was not a bad wrestler, but I guess my thoughts on John Walters is he didn't have a character or charisma, or a ton of charisma, and when you don't have those, or like a really unique look, and when you don't have any of those things, if you're going to get by just on your wrestling, and he also didn't have promo ability, if you're going to get by just on your wrestling, you got to be like super great, and he was good, but not great enough to get by on not having like anything else on his side, in my opinion.
Yeah, there were times, like, because my memories of John Walters were one thing, and on this rewatch, it's like, I think there were times where he was better than I remembered. I don't know if you felt that way.
I think his early matches in 2003, he looked pretty good, and obviously the Xavier match was honestly, that match at Final Battle 2003, it's kind of weird to say because he ended up getting a title run and lasting another year, but that was the peak, basically of his career here.
But a couple of those pure title matches, the one against Doug Williams, the one against Nigel McGuinness, I thought those were matches that were better than any John Walters matches that I remembered. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I thought he had some, he had potential, but yeah, it was just, he wasn't, considering there were so many great, fantastic all-timers in ROH at this time, he just couldn't match that without having something more as a hook, and he didn't, at least not at the time. He did develop a character eventually, and kind of got a lot of publicity for it a few years later, but never really showed it in ROH.
Yeah, I think if you're running like a lower tier indie with like a thinner roster at this point, you would have been really happy to have John Walters available to you. But like you said, with Ring of Honor at this point, you just had so many guys that just being fairly good and competent, you were just going to get lost in the shuffle. So, and
I should add that character that Walters played that got him attention in like 2010-ish probably wouldn't fly right now. Probably people, most promotions probably want to stay away from that association at this point.
If you saw, if there was a video version of this podcast, you would see me tugging on my shirt collar. Right
now.
After the match, Joe runs into the ring to congratulate Jay and raise his arm, and he's really happy for him. They hug. The crowd chants for Lethal as Lethal poses with the title. Joe and Jay shake hands, but Joe, you can tell, we don't hear him talk, but you can tell with his hand gestures, he's making it clear to Jay, like, I'm happy for you, but I want a title shot down the road. Joe leaves the ring, and Jay gets a quick handshake with John Walters, And that's that. So a nice little happy moment of celebration Jay Lethal gets, which I always like. I like when after guys win titles, they actually let it linger for a little bit and they don't just cut away. And they definitely give Jay some time here to kind of bask in the moment, which I liked.
Bask in his glory.
And that brings us to the main event, the Trios Tournament Final. The Rottweilers, Homicide, Ricky Reyes, Rocky Romero defeated Generation Next of Austin Aries, Jack Evans, and Roderick Strong in 21 minutes, 7 seconds when Homicide pinned Austin Aries after he hit the cop killer. Matt, this was the one other Trios match in this whole tournament that I think really got a good chunk of time. I guess you could say the Saints Rottweilers match did, but 15 minutes for 6 minutes, not bad. But of course, that was the match. The ring broke, but a lot of talent in this match, a fair bit of time. Main event, pressure of being the main event. We already know both of us didn't feel this was as good as that Samoa Joe match in the first round, but what did you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't go much higher than like 3.25, but I thought it was a good match. There were things about it that maybe took it down a little bit. But I thought it was, it was good. First of all, Smokes is wearing Patriots gear, which I guess must have had something to do with like something that happened in the previous football season with the Patriots and the Eagles, maybe. But I thought it was ironic because Smokes, his character, got arrested for peeing on Fenway Park because he hates Boston so much, and he's wearing Patriots gear. I don't know if anyone thought of that, but anyway,
he hates the Red Sox, but he loves the Patriots. Just switching it up.
Yeah, like a lot of New Yorkers apparently. I don't know, but I like that. As they start the match, Evan gets to do some serving to Homicide, like avoiding some offense and doing some necessary flips and gloating. So Homicide is sufficiently triggered by that. So he rips off one of the turnbuckle covers and teases hitting Jack with it before the ref takes it away. So Homicide and Jack Evans is definitely a fun dynamic. I can only really think of one singles match between them that they have later in 2005, but it's a pretty fun dynamic. Like Jack even stops Homicide running the ropes by doing a sudden bit of breakdancing. So I actually think Jack is probably at his this is his best performance of the night in this match. And Romero actually takes a cue from Jack because he's jawing with Strong on the apron, and he's so pissed that he actually throws Jack into the corner so he can tag Roderick Strong, and they have like a big slap exchange. And watching those two exchange strikes, I have to admit, was pretty fun. So that brought the match up for me. And they take it to the mat eventually, and they're doing mat stuff. I thought the first 10 minutes had pretty good pacing. I thought, Aries was really not in the match much at all during this time. So, but everyone else did a lot of fun character work and stuff. Aries finally gets in for the first time at the 10-minute mark. Does some of his spots, but he tags back out pretty quickly. They were definitely saving the Aries and Homicide stuff. I guess because that's the main event of the show 2 shows from now. But Homicide, so Aries is back in, and they're trying to triple team him in the corner, and Homicide attacks everyone in the Generation Next corner, and the Pitbulls come in to double team Aries, and it gets a little bit chaotic, and so Strong has Homicide on the outside, the Pitbulls are fighting Aries on the inside, and they do their little corner post drop kick thing that they do, and then it kind of settles back down with Homicide and the Pitbulls in control. And then Evans comes in. He does some of his flippies on Romero. Then the Rottweilers, they take over on Evans. Homicide hits an Alabama slam, a slingshot. Romero comes off the top while Evans is laying over Homicide's knees. Evans is trying to fight back, but he's weak. Homicide goes for a top row belly to back suplex, but Evans knocks him off and hits a moonsault, DDT thing or something that was supposed to be a DDT. At least the announcer said that. It got a pop, whatever it was, but it didn't look right to me. Strong comes in the ring. They do their 3-on-3 Donnybrook. Romero does a dive onto Strong. Aries ducks a clothesline by Homicide and hits his missile dive onto the Pitbulls. Homicide does his tope con hilo on everyone. Evans does his own little flippy, although he hits everybody except for Reyes, but Reyes goes down anyway. I don't know if you noticed that.
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah. Then it comes down to Aries versus Homicide briefly. Aries hits the Brain Buster. Homicide hits an ace cutter off the top rope, hits the lariat, gets two. Strong comes in, double knees to Homicide, and then Aries covers, but only gets two. Then the Pitbulls hit the knee drop over the knee. Homicide covers, but Jack Evans breaks it up with a 450. Reyes and Romero throw Evans onto the floor, and Aries comes up behind them and clotheslines them out of the ring. So Homicide and Aries finish it off one-on-one. Aries escapes the cop killer once, but Homicide gets it on like right after that and gets the win. Which is the right finish to set up a future title match. I liked the first 10 minutes. I liked the final few minutes. I thought the middle, kind of dragged, which, can happen sometimes. I thought they worked hard, but I don't know. I don't think it all came together into anything special. But I thought it was a good match, but disappointing considering the spot and the level of talent.
Yeah, I thought this was. I think I would agree with your rating, like a 3.25, maybe 3.5, maybe. But it's not. It's the second best match of the night, but for a main event with this talent on, and this was a show like. If this was the second or third match on a really good show, you'd be really happy with this kind of match. But the problem was this was a show that really at this point needed a really great match to kind of make the show. And, it was just decent. It was just fairly good. But there's not a ton wrong. It just doesn't get to that next level. And again, it's weird to complain. I feel kind of bad complaining about these matches because I don't know how much the ring affected these guys, and they're wrestling 3 times in one night. And although those first round matches weren't long, I thought Jack Evans, as usual, really good. Although my favorite part of the match, I did like that end sequence that you described, which was, Aries kicks out of Homicide's lariat, and Gabe on commentary goes, hey, that's what beat Generico in the first round. And then Aries takes the decapitation knee drop, and then when Evans saves him, Gabe's like, hey, that's what beat Vordell Walker in the second round. So I like the idea that Aries is able to survive the things that the Rottweilers used to win the first 2 matches, but then he finally, meets his match with the Cop Killer, which is a move by this point that Homicide wasn't just doing all the time. It was actually more often than not, he wasn't using the Cop Killer. So to see it was like, holy shit. He breaks it out and, beats the world champ with it. So I really like that end sequence. I like that. And the match that was in front of it was fine and, fairly good. It's just, again, fairly good at this point in the show was just kind of a disappointment, honestly. And, I wish I had more to say about this match. I felt at times in this match, I felt like these two teams had chemistry, and at other times I felt like there was just a little bit something missing. It was a weird up and down match for me in that sense. But after the match, we joined the Rottweilers backstage. Romero has a check from Ring of Honor, so maybe Steve was right about expecting a raise if he won the tournament. I don't know why Romero is like flaunting a check all of a sudden.
Yeah, they just don't really make any of that stuff clear.
Yeah, Homicide says he wants the world title. He wants a title shot against Aries, so he's basically saying, without really quite saying, that's what he's going to use his match that he gets to book on. Homicide suggests that the Pitbulls should go after the tag champs, but Romero seems to indicate that he and Reyes are interested in other matches. Like Romero kind of like blows him off, like which seems like kind of shitty. Like the guys that just lost the tag titles probably shouldn't be like, I don't want to go for the tag titles. I don't know. That seemed kind of weird to me, but I don't remember what they use their matches for.
So I know that Romero uses it for a title shot at Danielson much later in the year. I don't remember what Reyes uses it for. You know what I think there might have been? There might have been like one random Pitbulls tag title match, but that might not be until like 2007. I don't remember. So I don't remember if Reyes uses it before that or not. Is this the last Pitbulls match together besides the that 2007 match I just mentioned?
It might be, and Yeah, I think it might. I should have looked that up because I remember thinking, yeah, this is kind of the end of an era for the Pitbulls and Ring of Honor, an incredible era, Matt. But yeah, I think this promo, one thing that really kind of hits home for me is like the Rottweilers. I realized wanted to keep them strong, but like it is kind of a weird choice for them to win this tournament because like I don't think anyone is waiting on at this point in 2005. Anyone was like super excited, like what match is Rocky Romero or Ricky Reyes going to book for themselves? Like the only guy you're interested in this that team in terms of they can book any match they want is Homicide. You're not like anticipating the great Ricky Reyes challenge to come.
And it's not like they needed this match to get to a Homicide title shot. Although now I don't remember, is Homicide's Trios tournament match the one with Aries? Or did he get that because he beat Aries? And then his Trios tournament one is the one with Carino later in the year. I honestly, I guess we'll find out.
All I know is he gets the Aries title match in 2 shows. He gets it at the Best of the American Super Junior. Right. So, I mean, the way he's talking, he doesn't outright say, but he's certainly making it sound like he's going to use his title shot, his booking match award, whatever you want to call it, to get that title shot. But yeah, I'm not sure. So we cut to Sean Price for the last segment on the show. He finds the embassy as they're leaving the building. Prince Nana says Jay Lethal has something coming to him. Nana's also pissed that Punk is, quote, bugging them, unquote. I love the soft language of CM Punk is bugging them. He told Rave earlier in the show that he's going to murder him and he chased them around threw chairs at them, but he's bugging them.
Maybe he means like that there's like, putting like a bugging their office or their like a Nana's home or something like that, and spying on him.
I don't think this was intentional, but wouldn't it have been funny if he held up like the bug spray again? They used to show it like, we know something about bugging. Ha ha.
Yeah.
But anyway, at this point, Nana says that Punk is bugging them. A hobbling CM Punk chases them away with a chair yet again, screaming that he'll make them famous. And that is the weird way Trios Tournament 2005 ends. Kind of an abrupt, weird ending.
For an abrupt, weird show.
Yes. Matt, we talked about this a little bit privately before we did the show, but this is probably one of the worst Ring of Honor shows we've done, and it's weird. I think it does say something about how good Ring of Honor is, at least this era, and how much we enjoy it, where I can honestly say that both this was a show – it was one of the worst shows we've covered, probably, in my opinion. But also, it was not like a bad wrestling show. It was not painful to watch. The way I would categorize this is if Ring of Honor at this point had been a WWE and every show was like a 3-hour episode of Raw or something, this would be an episode of Raw where you'd be like, that wasn't particularly great, but I don't regret sitting down to watch it. A couple things happened. There was a title change. There was one pretty good match. But at the same point, when you judge it by the standards of look at all this talent on the show, and it was a $15 to $20 DVD you bought and waited for weeks in the mail anticipating, definitely a disappointment in that sense. And again, I realize it's kind of shitty to say that because half the show was wrestled with a broken ring, but it's the show we got, and it was not a great show.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's one of the worst shows we've ever seen because I think there were a number of like significantly lousy top-to-bottom shows in 2002 and a few in 2003 even, but definitely the worst since then. I can't think of a 2004 show that was worse than this one. So, yeah, I mean, and but like you said, still not bad. Just like it had its merits. It had one match that I thought was very, very good. Some other fun stuff. Definitely some noteworthy stuff. Prazak coming. That's a big deal. Some of the, just some of the weird little quirks to the show. But, yeah, it's just not that good. It's just so far below the standards that they set for themselves. That's the big thing. It's just they set a high bar, and this is the first time in a while where they really didn't come anywhere close to meeting it.
Yeah, and this is one of the shows. So I would say if you even watch like 80 or 90% of Ring of Honor shows, but you just want to skip a few, this is one I think you could feel safe putting in that 10% that you skip. But I mean, if you're a completist like us, if you're watching every show, it's not gonna, you're not going to feel like you were cheated out of 3 hours of your life watching this. And like Matt said, like there was some, if you're like like weird little trivia bits of historical things, pure title changed hands, first date time Dave Prazak commentated Ring of Honor. There was a tournament that you get to see come to an end on this show. Feuds keep on going. Things happen, but that brings us to the end of the show, though. So if you want to contact us through the years at gmail.com, THROH for through. We have a thread on the Pro Wrestling Only Plugs forum. You can get in touch with us on Twitter. I'm at Trevor Dame, Dame spelled D-A-M as in Mother E, or at Mayor MGF for Matt. We'll be coming back with our next episode. We'll be back to basics, which kind of makes me wish we had done the Trios tournament. We had squeezed that in the end of last year, Matt, because then we could have said, starting in 2021, we're going back to basics. Or if we had done a couple shows, been a little lazier, we could have said, starting 2021, it all begins. But instead, it was Trios tournament.
Well, the next show that we do, though, at least, will be the very first through the years we have ever done not during the Donald Trump administration. Unless Q makes his move. No, just kidding. I'm kidding.
Of course.
I want to make very clear that I'm kidding there, but...
I just want to make clear, Matt's talking about Q, the Star Trek The Next Generation character, and not the fabled conspiracy character.
The greatest American hero.
Okay, so back to basics. It's a Ring of Honor B show. Some stuff happens.
America will be going back to basics.
We'll be covering Jack Evans wrestles Spanky. Steve Corino no shows the show. We'll talk about. There'll be things to talk about, I am sure. But until next time, have a good time. Have a great time.